While working at a hardware store in Endicott, New York, 32-year-old divorcee Holly Patterson had seen her share of strapping men walk through the doors. But in January of 1999, one of those studs came to stay.
I was supervising head cashier, and I noticed a guy just started working. He was handsome and kind of caught my eye.
His name was Brian Angel, and from what Holly could tell, the 29-year-old more than lived up to his name.
He just seemed friendly and used to come in with his daughters a lot, and I just thought that was sweet. And all the girls thought, what a great guy.
But like most perfect men, Brian was perfectly taken.
He was married and she was beautiful, and he treated her great. I mean, he just seemed like the all-around good guy, perfect husband, great dad.
And after a difficult divorce, Holly, too, was focused on being a great parent to her own daughters, 8-year-old Alexis and 2-year-old Peyton.
After my ex and I separated, I just took the time to be myself. I really just wanted to be alone, to raise my kids.
Still, every time Holly saw Brian with his family, she couldn't help but hope that her own Mr. Perfect might still be out there. Then one day, a glimmer of hope.
I was out in the break room and Brian had come out and he said, I'm in the middle of a horrible separation. I was really taken back because I thought they had the perfect life.
Over the next 6 months, the co-workers became friends as Brian filled Holly in on his far from perfect marriage.
Brian told me that his wife would just instigate fights with him and tear him down. So I said, well, what are you gonna do? You know, you got those kids and everything. I know it's not easy. I felt horrible for him, and I kind of started getting a soft spot for him.
And in the fall of 2000, after Brian finalized his divorce, Holly felt comfortable taking the relationship to the next level. That's when Mr. Nice Guy turned into Mr. Wonderful.
He seemed like Prince Charming. He opened the car door for me. He would buy me flowers for no special reason. He'd take me to dinner. I finally felt like a princess.
Best of all, Brian was terrific with Holly's children.
He had his 4 daughters come over to introduce to my daughters, and all 6 of them were playing, and they were all getting along well.
I thought he was really cool. He was fun to be around. He was like a big kid, and I looked at him more like a friend.
In June of 2001, after crashing on friends' couches for the past 6 months, Brian hinted at moving in with Holly and her daughters.
I thought, if he just stays on the couch and he looks for a place to stay, I can tolerate it for a week or 2. After Brian had moved in, everything seemed to be going great. He was there for the girls. It just seemed like a perfect setup.
But what seemed like perfection would become unspeakably flawed.
He's a person that stretches boundaries. If you stretch them too fast, they snap.
I can't imagine what went through his mind to think that he'd ever get away with it.
And soon, Holly would see the devil lurking behind Brian's angel eyes.
I couldn't believe that my whole world came to an end. It just crashed down on me.
In the summer of 2001, Holly Patterson and her boyfriend Brian Angel were the picture of blended family perfection.
Brian usually would get his 4 girls once or twice during the week and then every other weekend. Of course, my daughters looked forward to spending time with his girls.
He would let us do whatever we wanted. Brian was like my buddy.
We had the perfect life. We were like the Brady Bunch, just all girls.
But circumstance was about to test their new family bonds.
Brian lost his job at the hardware store. He kind of butted heads with one of the managers out there. It did hit the household income a little bit. So we kind of had to make cutbacks, and it became a little bit of a struggle.
Brian reassured Holly that he'd land another job quickly. But in the meantime, he'd make himself useful by babysitting the girls after school.
It was comforting knowing that Brian was home with the girls while I was at work. I knew he was taking good care of them, making dinner, and the house was clean.
He did everything for Holly's girls. Brian talked about them all the time. He absolutely adored the two.
In fact, there was little Brian wouldn't do for the benefit of the girls.
On Alexis's 9th birthday party, she had about 8 girls spend the night. And then later that night, after we went to bed, something woke me up. And I looked and Brian wasn't in bed with me. So I went to go look for him. And when I went to the girls' room, I noticed that Brian was in there. And I said, "Brian, what are you doing?" And he got up real quietly and, "Shh, one of the girls were choking. I took her a glass of water. Go back to bed." And I said, "Okay, I'm glad he heard her."
For months, the Patterson Angel clan coasted along, with Holly bringing home the bacon and Brian holding down the fort. But in the winter of 2002, Holly noticed a change in her older daughter Alexis's attitude toward Brian.
They still thought he was funny, but now he would discipline them if they were bad. I noticed Alexis was kind of pulling away, kind of giving him dirty looks and rolling her eyes once he started playing the stepfather role.
Rough patch with Alexis aside, things were looking up for the family when Brian found a great new job as a union carpenter.
We worked on the same job sites, and it was always great to work with Brian. Brian was the one that anytime you needed help, he was there.
Everybody kind of counted on him. Whatever it needed to be, he was always helping.
Brian's kindness and generosity was unmatched, right down to the family's bedtime ritual.
Every night before bed, the girls would go to bed with a drink. Brian would get their drinks all ready to go. He'd have Peyton's sippy cup ready with juice or Alexis's glass of water ready to go. He often made my tea to go to bed, and I thought that was sweet.
But sweet dreams soon became a thing of the past when Peyton started having nightmares.
Peyton would start yelling for me, "Mom, come here, Mom," and crying. I'd go up and I'd say, "What's the matter, honey? I had a bad dream," and I would soothe her back to sleep. And Brian would get really mad at me for going in and comforting her. And he'd say, "She needs to grow up. She can sleep through the night." And she'd ask me to lay down with her. And I wanted to because I wanted to comfort her, but I knew that if I started that ritual, and I knew I'd do it every night.
Meanwhile, Holly was developing some strange sleeping problems herself.
Brian had started remodeling a couple of the rooms, and I didn't know if it was allergies or something from dust kicking around, but sometimes it was really hard to wake up in the morning, and I would get to work and say, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't feel like I can function. I'm just so tired."
But dust and drowsiness seemed a small price to pay for Brian's hard work on improving her family's home.
Brian was passionate about what he did, so he worked really hard doing stuff around the house. He finished the kitchen for me. He treated me and the girls like gold.
But Brian's motives would prove to be anything but selfless.
Nobody really knows what happens in the middle of the night when he's out lurking in the dark.
And soon Holly would discover just how heartless her Mr. Wonderful could be.
She would not stay at the house. She feared him.
I just felt like I was in the middle of a nightmare. Everything was spinning. Like, what is going on?
Despite a few sleep issues, in the summer of 2005, Holly Patterson and her boyfriend Brian Angel were living a storybook life. But one night, Holly awoke to a disorienting sight.
I woke up and Brian was standing right at the end of my bed, underneath the opening to the attic. I said, "What are you doing?" And he kind of looked at me funny, like I scared him. And he said, "Killing a bug." And I really didn't think anything of it. I was half asleep. So I kind of just let it go.
And shortly after Brian started his new carpentry job, Holly noticed he seemed to have a short fuse.
Most of the time, Brian was great to be around, but once he would get angry about one little thing, it was an explosion of anger and him throwing things and screaming.
Brian was changing in ways Holly never expected. He even began drinking frequently.
I didn't know what was going on. It seemed to be a daily thing, causing a strain on a relationship because he was coming home at 7 or 8 at night, drunk, and he would just be cocky and ornery, and His Mr. Perfect kind of started to fade.
After 5 years together, it seemed this Brady bunch was losing its shiny, happy veneer. Especially when Holly noticed Alexis, now 13, was starting to become an introverted teenager.
Alexis was really kind of withdrawn. She secluded herself to her room a lot.
But Holly was taken aback when Brian said Alexis had started showering in the dark.
And I said, well, I didn't even know she turned the light off.
You can see from down the stairs if the lights are off.
And I said, she can take a shower in the dark if she wants to. She was very private, kept to herself. I noticed Nikki, her best friend that used to be here on a daily basis, wasn't coming over anymore. And I asked her, where's Nikki? And she kind of passed it off to being in the middle school and them kind of drifting apart.
So Holly was grateful when Brian suggested some BFF bonding time for the girls in the country.
I had to stay back here and work, so Brian offered to take the girls up to Seneca Lake to go jet skiing and, just have a good weekend together.
But when they returned, Alexis let her mother in on a secret.
She said, Brian let Nikki get drunk. I said, she's 13. And she said, yeah, and he drank with her. So I said, really? Are you kidding me? I was shocked. So I went to Brian right away.
Brian explained he'd found Nikki sneaking around with a bottle of alcohol she'd found.
He said, I didn't let her drink. So I was really bothered by it.
Combined with the escalation of his own drinking and aggressive outbursts, Holly began to reconsider their relationship.
And I gave him the ultimatum. I said, you can't be the man that you were when I first met you. I said, I don't want to be with you.
I promise, I'm done.
And he said, I promise, I'll change, I promise.
To Holly's relief, Brian took her ultimatum seriously, and the next 3 years flew blissfully by. And in May of 2008, in front of a crowd of hundreds at a local racetrack, Brian asked Holly to become his Mrs. Angel.
So, Holly?
Oh my God.
Will you be my wife?
And I said yes. And everybody was cheering. My daughters were so excited for me. They were very happy. They hugged me, they hugged Brian.
After 8 years together, Holly and Brian finally tied the knot with all 6 of their daughters standing by their sides.
The whole family was at the wedding, so it was nice to just have everyone together.
And the newlyweds couldn't have been happier when Holly discovered she was pregnant 8 months later, this time with a boy. When their son Dallas was born in December 2010, Holly felt blessed to be living her dream.
This time being pregnant just meant the world to me, with Brian being there and being so loving, and I just knew that this just is perfect.
But that summer, Holly's perfect life would take a devastating turn. While Peyton stayed home with Brian, Holly took Alexis to get settled in for her first year at college.
I spent the day with Alexis, at her school, and I noticed that Peyton had texted me. And I looked at it and it said, Mom, you need to call me. This is an emergency.
Holly's heart leapt into her throat, and she immediately called Peyton.
And the way she answered the phone was odd to me because she kind of was in a whisper. And I said, what is going on? What are you doing?
What Peyton said next would turn Holly's future dreams into an utter nightmare.
If she could have killed him, she would have right there.
I said, you need to get out of the house. You need to leave that house right now.
If you have a story for Who the Bleep and would like to appear on the series, go to investigation.discovery.com. On the night of March 25th, 2011, while away with her daughter Alexis, Holly Angel received an emergency call from her youngest daughter, Peyton.
She goes, I can't talk. I'll call you back. I said, don't do this to me. I said, text me or something. So I hung up with her, frantic. Is she hiding from somebody? Is something happening to her? Do I call 911? What do I do? What if she doesn't text me?
After several heart-pounding minutes, Peyton's text finally came through, and what she had to say nearly dropped Holly to her knees.
She said, Mom, Brian's walking around the house naked. telling me to get in the shower and saying he is gonna get sexual favors. I said, oh my God, Peyton. And I'm panicking. I said, you need to get out of the house. You need to leave that house right now. And I said, start walking like you're walking to your dad's house. I'll get a hold of Grandma and tell her to come pick you up.
I was really scared because if Brian looked out his window, he could see me walking.
Within minutes, Peyton was safe in her grandmother's care, and Holly began to process what her youngest daughter had said.
I said to Alexis, has he ever said or done anything like this to you? And she put her hands over her eyes and she just started crying. And I just said, what is going on? And she said, he's doing it to Peyton too?
Holly was stunned to learn that Brian had been preying on Alexis and her sister for 10 years. Her heart crumbled as Alexis confessed that Brian used to watch her shower from a vent in the attic.
I knew that he was up there. So I decided after that I would just shower in the dark. It really scared me.
And I thought, well, what was he doing when I woke up that day? Was he jumping up into that attic? So all these memories are coming back of things that just seem strange, out of place.
But nothing could have prepared Holly for what Alexis would say next.
Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night and my pants were down. When I woke up in the morning, I would see Brian in my room, and he would always get real jumpy if I woke up while he was in there. And it just, scared me.
And I said, honey, I'm so sorry.
Holly's mind raced as she thought back through Brian's behavior over the years.
Things I couldn't put my finger on, and now they made perfect sense. When Peyton would wake up in the middle of the night, screaming, with him helping us get ready for bed with drinks, I think he very well could have been putting sleeping pills in our waters at night. I was devastated. Everything I thought I knew of him, the dream that I thought I lived in, my whole world came to an end. It just crashed down on me.
Holly immediately contacted the girl's father, who alerted the police. And on March 27, 2011, Brian Angel was arrested for sexual abuse in the first and second degree.
We all, just cried. I thought I had a wonderful marriage, and it never was. And my husband, that I thought was the man of my dreams, just got arrested for sexually assaulting my two girls.
And Holly's daughters were not the only victims. While Brian had not preyed on his biological children, after his arrest, several neighborhood girls came forward with their own tales of abuse while on playdates at the Angel home.
He was always lurking, always sneaking, and so all the kids recalled pants off, underwear off, but they don't know how it happened in the middle of the night.
And that camping trip to Seneca Lake? Brian had actually supplied Alexis's friend Nikki with the alcohol she supposedly found.
He wanted to be the fun dad, the fun father, we're gonna give him alcohol and stuff like that. But this is part of the grooming process to get him to the next level where he can do things for his own sexual gratification.
On February 15, 2012, Brian Angel pled guilty to first and second degree sexual abuse for molesting Alexis and Peyton. But rather than endure a painful trial, the additional victims agreed to a plea deal.
The kids in this grand jury room were crying, and you feel terrible for them. It's basically a plea deal to avoid the trial, so that no other charges would be brought against them, and avoid a lot more hurt and then let the healing begin.
Brian Angel was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Today, Holly struggles to believe that Brian Angel, her charming, handsome husband, was really a devil in disguise.
I just felt tricked. I felt betrayed by everything. Nothing was real. Nothing, not even him, He was able to fake this wonderful man, and the real him was that monster.
And even though the experience has been difficult, Holly and her girls are determined to get through this together.
My mom and I have always been really close. I always felt like I could talk to her about anything. Now I really can talk to her about anything, and I just feel free.
I'm healing from it now. So I feel a lot better about it. I'm so glad that he's gone and we don't have to deal with that anymore.
We take it day by day. Every day's better. We're healing from it. We're moving forward together.
Single mom Anna Torres adored her 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth.
I was 16 when I got pregnant with Elizabeth. My heart was filled with joy. I was just elated to have my first child, a little girl.
But Anna felt trapped in her relationship with Lizzie's father.
It was a bad relationship. I wanted better. I wanted to move on.
So in the summer of 1997, Anna found the courage to leave. She moved from Anaheim to Orange, California, and got a job working as a dispatcher for a local tow truck company.
I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was able to move on with my life.
Anna was focused on building a good life for Lizzie. Romance was the last thing on her mind. But that fall, Anna realized a coworker was paying close attention to her.
I would work the night shift. He would come in because he was a tow truck driver. He would just chat. I wasn't looking for anybody at that time, but he was pretty persistent with coming around, bringing lunch, flowers at times. Kind of made me think, he seems like a really nice guy.
The man's name was Ed Montano, and over the next few months, Anna was surprised by how comfortable she felt opening up to him. And even more surprised when her stories of past relationship dramas and being a single mom didn't send Ed running for the hills.
I wouldn't say there was a chemistry attraction there, but he didn't seem like he would hurt a fly. He genuinely seemed like he cared, like he wanted to comfort me.
Anna and Ed's friendship quickly blossomed into romance. And after 6 months of dating, Anna was excited to meet Ed's adoptive parents and learn more about his family. But the visit would leave Anna with more questions than answers.
Ed and his father walked away to have a conversation, and his mother started to make small talk, and I started to talk about my daughter. And she did not know that I had a child. And she said, "You have a child?" And I said, "Yes. Didn't Ed tell you?" And she said, "No." And so I was disappointed, didn't understand. He just seemed to be so accepting of Lizzie and loving.
Anna was heartbroken by Ed's glaring omission, and she wondered why would adoptive parents have such strong feelings about stepkids.
Ed told me that his parents were very old-fashioned and wanted to see him get married, then have a child, because Ed had been married previously with 2 stepchildren. I felt that they looked at it as, oh boy, here we go again. Being married with stepkids, it's not going to work out.
Ed assured Anna that his mother's views were not his own. And 6 months later, when Anna discovered she was pregnant and Ed suggested they get married, any doubts Anna felt about Ed's commitment disappeared.
I just wanted to say, hey, I did the right thing, and I've moved on, and he's so good. And, you know, he's really soft, and he's gentle, and he's quiet.
She thought Ed was the nice guy, and he was going to take care of her, and they were going to raise his family together.
So in January of 1998, Anna and Ed tied the knot in a no-frills ceremony at City Hall.
Being 4 months pregnant, I didn't want to have a big wedding. I was excited about the fresh start. I desired to be, married in a committed relationship with somebody who said that he loved me. And I was happy. I was happy.
And when Anna gave birth to a son, she counted her blessings.
I felt it was only right to name him after his father. And when he held him in his hands, he cried. I was happy to see him, to be happy.
But Ed's gentle facade was hiding too many sinister secrets to count.
Behind closed doors, he was a monster.
Secrets that would tear Anna's small family to shreds.
I told him that this confession was going to be under confidentiality, but confidentiality has its limitations.
He was a different man than what I had known.
The clean-cut guy who volunteers in the community, nobody suspects that person.
In the summer of 1998, newlyweds Anna Torres and Ed Montano had just welcomed a baby boy into their blended family.
It was a fresh start for all of us. We became a family of 4.
Anna and Ed and Elizabeth and little Eddie, they just seem to be a beautiful family.
And when Ed announced he was going to pursue his dream of becoming an EMT, Anna couldn't have been more supportive.
Ed said that he wanted to become an EMT because he wanted to be home there more for the kids.
He took pride in being part of a team. I think that was important for Ed to look good in his community.
But Ed worked the night shift and Anna worked days, so theirs was a tough schedule to keep.
Ed and I were like 2 ships passing in the night. He said he preferred the night shift because there was more activity, there was more action, and he seemed to flourish in that.
And as the next several years passed, Anna also realized that she and Ed had very different ideas when it came to parenting their children.
When I would get home from work and make dinner, I noticed that both of their appetites started to change. So I would ask them, and they said, "Oh, well, Dad took us to eat." And he would say, "Well, you know, they're kids. They want some fast food."
And Ed wasn't just spoiling the kids' appetites.
When I would come home, there would be these new gadgets, the cell phone, a karaoke machine, a video game. It was always something that we couldn't afford, but yet he felt a necessity to buy these for the kids. He was wanting to spoil them, which I could understand, but what I couldn't understand was he wasn't teaching them any values. He wasn't saying, okay, well, you know, you have to earn this by doing this.
Anna was irritated by Ed's lazy parenting, but she knew the kids were in safe hands, so she pushed her feelings aside. Until one day, when Anna received a call from Lizzie's school, asking why she had been absent that day.
It was about when Lizzie was in 5th grade or so. I thought something terrible had happened. I started to really panic. I just left work and took off like a bat out of hell.
When Anna got home, Lizzie was nowhere to be seen, and Ed was fast asleep.
I just shook him as hard as I could and said, "Where's Elizabeth? Where's Elizabeth? The school called, she's not there. Where is she?" And he just turned around and he said, "Oh, she's at her friend's house across the street playing." I said, "She didn't show up to school today." And he said, "I know, she was sick." And I remember turning around, looking at him saying, "If she's sick, then why did you allow her to go play at her friend's house? That doesn't make any sense." And so I was angry. If she was genuinely sick, then why didn't he call me?
Ed apologized and agreed to call Anna if there was ever an issue with the kids. Over the next several years, life went pleasantly by for Anna and her family. But as Lizzie approached her teen years, Anna noticed a troubling change in her daughter.
Lizzie did seem to be withdrawn at certain periods in her life. And I always attributed that to her age and growing and developing into a young woman.
Anna also noticed signs of depression in her husband.
Ed would flip-flop from being a passive and loving and wanting to help to a person that kind of switched, changed, became depressed, and then his behavior became more and more withdrawn. They noticed him spending more time in the bedroom, not communicating.
Anna wondered what was happening to her family. And in the spring of 2007, when they moved to a small town in Nevada, she hoped the change of scenery would do them good. But before long, Anna would learn that her family's mood swings were the least of her worries.
He came across as a great guy. People didn't realize what was really underneath.
Nobody suspected him. He was an EMT, so people in the community trusted him.
I immediately got these butterflies in my stomach thinking, oh my gosh, what is wrong?
By the winter of 2008, Anna Torres and Ed Montano had been married for nearly 10 years, but they had become more focused on their children than on their own relationship.
I was occupied with working and making dinner, taking the kids to their functions at school. Ed didn't have a desire to participate in any functions unless it was with our kids.
Anna didn't really mind. After all, Ed was a loving father, but his tendency to be a pushover as a parent was becoming increasingly frustrating to her.
Ed would come to Lizzie's defense, and if I disciplined her. So if I told her that she was grounded for one day, and the next day I'd come home from work, and where's Lizzie? Oh, well, she's, at so-and-so's house or doing something.
Anna was irritated at the parental sabotage and annoyed that she always had to play the role of strict parent as well as deal with the repercussions.
Lizzie's grades started to slip, and I let Lizzie know that it was really important to keep her grades up. And if she could not do that, she was going to have to miss a couple of dancing lessons until we could get her back on schedule. I remember her just reacting like it was the end of the world for her. Just crying and saying, no, I love going to dance. I love singing, Mom, I'll keep my grades up.
Anna thought Lizzie was struggling with typical teen angst, but on February 4th, 2008, Anna received a call that would prove her 14-year-old daughter was dealing with something far more serious.
I was at work and I got a phone call, and it was the school nurse. And I said, is Lizzie okay? And she said, you need to come down to the school. I need to talk to you. And I immediately got these butterflies in my stomach thinking, oh my gosh, what is wrong? So when I got down to the school, I had gone in the nurse's office. Lizzie looked at the nurse and she started to cry. And the nurse told her, it's okay. You can tell your mom. And she told me, Dad's been touching me and he's been doing it for a long time. And I just hugged her and I told her I would stand by her, and I believe her and I would support her. At that moment, that's all I could do.
The revelations were gut-wrenching. Anna learned that Ed Montano had been molesting Lizzie since she was 5 years old. After taking Elizabeth to the police station to file a report, Anna turned her focus to confronting her husband.
My mother had taken Lizzie and my son to her home so I could confront Ed. When I got home, he sat down at the table and I looked right at him and I said, Lizzie said that you have been sexually abusing her. Immediately, he put his head down and he said it's not true, but he wouldn't look at me. Get out! I was standing by the stove and I remember that block of knives being there, and I just wanted to pick it up and just stab him with it. I was so angry.
Anna immediately kicked Ed out of the house.
She had a hard time focusing in reality. One day, she's married, and then the next day, everything that she thought to be true was just falling apart.
I didn't know if it was both of my children that he had abused. I spoke with my son and asked him if he also had been abused, and he had not. Started to analyze everything, every gift he had bought, everything that he had done. What did I miss? What didn't I see? It just started to all kind of fit together and make sense.
Ed hadn't been spoiling the kids or shirking his parental responsibility. He had been bribing them to keep them quiet.
He would buy him a soda or chips or something like that. And then he would take Elizabeth into the bedroom, shut the door so that Eddie wouldn't see it. He'd put a movie on for Eddie so that he'd sit down and watch it so that they were alone in the bedroom without any adult supervision, without any other witnesses around.
And Anna began to wonder if her in-laws' objection to Ed marrying a single mother was caused by something far worse than their old-fashioned values. Did they know about Ed's secret?
My head was in a cloud. I cried. I tried to keep it together for my kids. But when you're told that a man that you've been married to for 10 years is a monster. There was no way to process that information.
But as Anna and her family tried to heal, they would soon learn that Ed was more than a child molester.
He was living that lie for so many years.
He was able to manipulate all these people.
His dark secrets went much, much deeper.
The person that I was married to didn't exist.
If you have a story for Who the Bleep and would like to appear on the series, go to investigationdiscovery.com. In February of 2008, Anna Torres was struggling to comprehend that her husband had been molesting her 14-year-old daughter Lizzie for 9 years.
It's really hard to accept that somebody that you love and you trust and you've been married to for 10 years would harm your children.
But Lizzie's confession was just the first step on a painful path to justice.
Ed told her, if you tell, then the family's going to fall apart. Your mom's going to be upset. I'm going to go to jail. And so the things that Ed had told her would happen started to happen.
Because of Ed's powerful manipulation, Lizzie felt responsible for breaking up the family and was afraid to take any further action against Ed.
Elizabeth had to go to therapy to mentally get to a place where she could talk about it.
So for the next 18 months, Lizzie worked with a forensic psychologist. But that meant 18 months that Ed was out free and allowed supervised visits with his 10-year-old son.
It was torture for me and my family, thinking that he was going to be able to go free.
It was a stressful time, trying to deal with him still being out on the street. It was hard for the family.
While Lizzie struggled through therapy, Ed was doing some talking of his own.
When Ed came to me and started talking about this, I told him that confidentiality has its limitations. He admitted that he was doing this to Elizabeth.
Father Jorge ended up coming forward and telling the police about what he had been told. But without a victim to testify, this is what happened to me, then the case really can't go forward.
Worried for her daughter's safety, Anna decided to keep tabs on Ed's whereabouts and was sickened by what she discovered.
I was informed that he was dating a woman that had 3 children and had actually moved in with her and her children.
He was living in this neighborhood where there's parks on 2 different sides and children crossing his house on a daily basis.
And when Elizabeth realized that what she went through could happen to someone else, she found the courage to press charges. On April 29, 2010, Ed Montano was arrested and charged with 3 counts of open and gross lewdness.
Elizabeth was incredibly brave in this whole process. Sitting in a courtroom full of strangers with the person who's been abusing you, the person who should have protected you.
She was having to go through that again, all because this man wouldn't come forward and say he was guilty.
In October of 2010, with Lizzie's testimony, Ed was convicted on all 3 counts and sentenced to 3 years in jail. Terrified that Ed would be out soon and able to abuse more victims, Anna decided to do some investigating of her own.
I started to look back and analyze everything that he would say, things that just didn't click or didn't make sense. That's when I decided to make an anonymous phone call to immigration.
And Anna's instincts were spot on.
Ed was not a citizen of the United States and had a felony arrest for a burglary. And so we didn't want him to be kicked out of the country before we could get that conviction on him. So what I discussed with immigration was that we would go forward with our charges first.
The man that I knew as Ed Montano in reality was a man named Manuel Dominguez. He was born in Mexico and he was given to this couple and brought to the United States.
Anna's son was named after a criminal and a ghost. As devastating as this information was to Anna, she was relieved to know that Ed would be deported back to Mexico upon his release from jail and not allowed back in the country.
No way in hell was I going to let him walk away and not be punished for what he did to my child.
Today, it is nearly impossible to describe the effect Ed Montano's betrayal has had on Anna Torres and Elizabeth.
I feel like he sought me out to prey on somebody who was young, naive, and came out of a bad relationship.
While Elizabeth still struggles with the emotional wounds left behind by abuse, she is determined to put it behind her.
Elizabeth is still a very caring person, and I think that says a lot about her.
And Lizzie continues to look to her mother for inspiration, who has finally found the true love she so desired.
And now I know what a healthy love relationship is. So I choose to move forward, and I choose to go on with life.
The question still echoes through the narrow corridors of Berlin's old apartment blocks, whispered through stairwells and echoed beneath flickering hallway lights. How can a person vanish without a scream, without a trace, without even the faintest ripple in the night? It was a cold case that grew colder than the December air that first swallowed it. A mystery buried under 16 years of dust, rumor, and fear. Until the day a sudden arrest jolted the city awake like a thunderclap splitting the sky. But before that shockwave tore through Berlin, before the headlines blared, case reopened, breakthrough, suspect detained, there was only silence, a silence so suffocating it felt alive. And inside that silence was a name, Lena Moritz, 26 years old, graphic designer, quiet, disciplined, living alone in a fourth-floor flat overlooking the tram lines of Friedrichshain. The last confirmed sighting of her was a blur of lights on the station's CCTV camera, 2214, December 3, 2003, a long burgundy coat. A scarf pulled high against the wind, a tote bag hugged close to her chest. She stepped off the tram, turned left into the street leading home. And then she was gone, gone as if Berlin had swallowed her whole, as if the night had folded its arms and hid her somewhere no one would ever look. The city reacted the way cities do when the unbelievable happens, first with shock, then with suspicion, and finally with resignation. Posters with Lena's face fluttered on lampposts until the rain softened their ink into ghostly smears. Police combed through alleyways, dumpsters, basements, rooftops. Cadaver dogs traced phantom scents that led nowhere. Neighbors whispered in doorways. Some claimed they heard a scream that night. Others swore they heard nothing but the usual rhythm of trams clattering across rails. No break-ins. No signs of a struggle. No suspicious cars. No footprints. Just absence, maddening, total absence. Detectives called it one of Berlin's cleanest disappearances, a phrase that tasted wrong the moment it left their mouths. Clean suggested intention, clean suggested someone who planned meticulously, someone who erased their tracks before they were ever left. But if there was such a person, they moved like vapor, leaving behind only questions sharp enough to cut. What happened after Lena stepped off that tram? Did she walk home? Did she turn down a different street? Did someone follow her? Or was she lured by a voice she recognized, something soft, but wrong enough to freeze her steps? These questions multiplied like shadows and wrapped themselves around the case until it became not an investigation, but an obsession. The community never forgot. Each anniversary, a candlelight vigil lined the edge of the tram station. People who never met Lena still came, holding flowers and muttering theories in hushed tones. Cold case forums online gnawed at the mystery like wolves at bone, dissecting every scrap of information, the angle of a camera, the timing of the tram, the route of a taxi seen idling nearby. Some insisted the abductor was local. Others blamed travelers, passers-by, transient figures who slipped in and out of the city. A few believed Lena staged her own escape, though that theory crumbled under the weight of her abandoned bank accounts, her unpaid rent, her untouched passport gathering dust on her dresser. Nothing pointed outward. Everything pointed inward, to Berlin itself, to its twisting alleys and quiet streets and watchful eyes. The police worked the case hard in the beginning. Then harder. But eventually the file slid into the abyss reserved for forgotten tragedies. It was labeled cold case, boxed, shelved, and left to sleep under the fluorescent hum of an archive room deep beneath police headquarters. If anyone walked past the box, they did not pause. If anyone remembered her, they remembered in silence. 16 years passed like a slow, inevitable snowfall burying the truth grain by grain. And then, without warning, fate cracked open. It happened on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday morning, a commuter rush, hurried footsteps, the smell of burnt coffee drifting from underground kiosks. Berlin moved with its usual rhythm, indifferent, iron-spined, forward-driven. But upstairs, in the cold case review unit, a young analyst named Theo Hallman made a discovery that would send shockwaves across the entire city. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even intentional. Theo was digitizing old files for the department's new archival system when he noticed something strange. A partial fingerprint lifted from Lena's apartment doorframe, believed for years to belong to Lena herself, did not match her prints on file. That meant someone else had touched the door. Someone who should never have been there. Someone who had never been identified. The partial print was run through the new federal biometric database, something unavailable back in 2003. The result flashed on screen like lightning, a match. Not a vague similarity, not a tentative alignment, an exact match. A man living less than 5 kilometers from Lena's old apartment. A man who had never before been a suspect. A man whose name would soon dominate every news broadcast in Germany, Markus Keller, 46 years old, electrician, divorced, quiet, private, unremarkable. The type of man neighbors described as polite but distant, the type whose face dissolves instantly in a crowd. He had been 29 when Lena disappeared, young enough to blend in, old enough to know how to hide. Police moved quickly, quietly, aware that even a whisper of their discovery would ignite the public. They followed Keller for 2 days, watching him leave his building at dawn, watching him return at dusk, watching him sit alone in a small bar on Warschauer Strasse, nursing a beer without speaking to anyone. Nothing about him screamed monster. Nothing about him screamed killer. But something about him screamed wrong. The way he avoided eye contact. The way he flinched at sudden noises. The way he kept glancing over his shoulder, as if fearing a past he thought he'd buried. When detectives finally approached his door with a warrant, Keller froze, not with shock, but with recognition, as though he had been expecting this moment for years. They cuffed him in the hallway as neighbors leaned out of door frames, whispering, "Was ist passiert," and recording on their phones. And though Keller said nothing, though he offered no resistance, his silence felt heavier than any outburst. It felt like a confession wrapped in dread. But here is where the story twists, where the ground under the city begins to shift. Because Keller's arrest did not solve the case. It detonated it. Inside his apartment, investigators found no body, no clothing, no personal belongings of Lena's, no trophies, no journals, nothing to suggest he had ever crossed paths with her. But they did find something else, something far more chilling, a notebook, plain and weathered, filled with addresses and dates spanning over 20 years. Names crossed out. Locations circled. Some were old crime scenes, burglaries, missing persons, unsolved assaults. A map of Berlin covered the inside of the back cover, traced with lines that intersected like a spider's web. Keller refused to speak. Not a word. Not during the arrest. Not during the transport. Not during the initial questioning. He sat unmoving, hollow-eyed, his breathing slow and even, as though he were listening to something only he could hear. When asked about the fingerprint, he blinked once, as if acknowledging the question, but denying the need for an answer. His lawyer insisted it was contamination, coincidence, error. But everyone in the room felt the same cold truth seep in like fog. This man knew something. This man had seen something. This man might be the final link to a case Berlin thought it had buried. As news of the arrest broke, the city erupted. Headlines exploded across screens. Berlin 2003 cold case solved. Unexpected arrest rattles the city. Crowds gathered outside police headquarters. Talk shows speculated wildly. True crime forums went feral. Everyone wanted to know, if Keller was the suspect, where was Lena? What happened between the tram stop and her locked, untouched apartment? And most chilling of all, were the crossed-out names in his notebook: victims, accomplices, or something else entirely. But even as Berlin thundered with curiosity, dread, and relief, one truth became clear: the story was nowhere near finished. The arrest was not closure. It was the opening of a door that had stayed sealed for 16 long years. And behind that door, the darkness waited, breathing, patient, ready to reveal its face, piece by piece. The city did not sleep the night Marcus Keller was taken into custody. Berlin pulsed like a living organism shocked by an electric charge, its streets humming with speculation, its stations echoing with fragments of conversation. People spoke of the cold case, as if it had happened yesterday rather than 16 years ago. Cars slowed near the tram stop where Lena was last seen, as if expecting her silhouette to suddenly reappear beneath the harsh glare of the station lights. The air felt tense, brittle, charged by the sense that something long buried had clawed its way back to the surface. And while the public roared with questions, inside the interrogation room the silence deepened, thick, suffocating, impenetrable. Detective Hannah Kruger, the lead investigator in the reopened case, stared across the metal table at Keller. A single overhead lamp cast stark shadows across his face, carving deep lines into his expressionless features. His hands were folded neatly in his lap. He hadn't asked for water. He hadn't asked for a lawyer until one was offered. He looked like a man waiting for a train, patient, calm, resigned to an arrival he knew he couldn't stop. Hannah studied him, noting every twitch, every subtle shift. She knew the city was watching, demanding answers, demanding movement. But Keller remained motionless, anchored in silence. She leaned forward. "Marcus," she said quietly, "your fingerprint was found on Lena Moritz's apartment doorframe. 16 years later, it led us to you. Tell me why it was there." Keller blinked once. Not a flinch. Not a tremor. Just a slow, deliberate blink. "You understand how this looks," she continued, voice steady but sharpened by urgency. "You lived 5 kilometers from her. You had no reason to be near her home. No connection to her. And yet, your print is there. Help me understand." Nothing. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning unit filled the void. Hannah tapped the notebook found in his apartment. "This isn't nothing. These are names. Dates. Locations. Many correlate with unsolved cases. Including December 3, 2003, the night Lena disappeared. Why did you write down that date?" Keller tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging the question, but refusing its weight. His eyes drifted toward the mirror on the wall, the one-way glass hiding the officers watching his every move. His gaze lingered, almost knowingly, before returning to Hannah. The silence felt like a wall closing in. Behind the glass, Theo Hallman watched with clenched fists. He had become the accidental spark that reignited the cold case, and now he felt the city's pressure like a vice on his chest. Every update posted online. Every rumor spreading across message boards. Every commentator calling this Berlin's most chilling break in decades. The case had gone from forgotten to volcanic overnight, and Theo, still new to the department, felt the tremors in every direction. But what unnerved him most was Keller's eyes, flat, calm, unreadable. They weren't the eyes of a panicked man. They were the eyes of someone who had rehearsed silence for years. Hannah ended the session after 3 hours of verbal deadlock. Keller was escorted back to his holding cell, walking with a strange, almost mechanical steadiness. As he disappeared down the hallway, she felt a twist in her stomach, a sense that he was withholding more than information, that he was actively shaping the investigation simply by refusing to participate. That night, as officers pored over Keller's notebook, they uncovered something darker hidden within the scribbled addresses. 4 of the locations corresponded to buildings that had since been demolished. One address belonged to an abandoned warehouse. Another to a parking garage that had once been the heart of an illicit underground scene. The dates beside them marked nights where unrelated individuals had vanished or been found assaulted, cases that were still open, frozen in uncertainty. But there was one entry that made the entire room go still. A small symbol. A circle with an X through it. Drawn beside only 2 names, Lena Moritz and another woman missing since 1999. No explanation. No legend. No cross-references. Just that symbol, etched deeply into the page, as if Keller had pressed the pen down harder than usual. Theo stared at the symbols, feeling the hair along the back of his neck rise. "What does it mean?" he whispered. No one answered. No one could. Investigators expanded the search warrant on Keller's apartment. Teams descended into his basement storage unit. Dust clouded the air as they pried open old crates and moved aside tools. The small, windowless space felt oppressive, a chamber of stale secrets. Under a pile of old insulation material, they found an object that made even the most seasoned officers take a step back. A tram ticket. Stamped with the date, the 3rd of December, 03. Validated at the exact station where Lena had been last seen. The ticket was preserved perfectly, almost intentionally, pressed inside a sealed plastic sleeve. And next to it, clipped carefully, was a photograph, grainy, low resolution, but unmistakably Lena. The image appeared to be taken from a distance, perhaps through a window or from behind a corner. She was walking, head down, unaware that the camera was on her. The timestamp on the photo, 22:10. 4 minutes before the CCTV recorded her stepping off the tram. Someone had been watching her. Following her. Tracking her movements. And Keller had kept the evidence for 16 years. When Hannah was shown the items, she felt her pulse throb in her throat. "This is not a man who stumbled onto her doorframe by accident," she said. "This is someone who monitored her." But the question grew sharper with every minute. Was he the predator, or was he merely a witness to something far worse? Before she could unravel that thread, another shock struck. A woman came forward, a former neighbor from 2003, gray-haired now, her voice trembling as she spoke. She had seen Keller before. She remembered him not as a stranger, but as a man who used to stand across the street from Lena's building, late at night, cigarette in hand, staring at the windows. She admitted she hadn't reported it back then. "I thought he lived nearby. People smoke outside all the time. I didn't know, God, I didn't know." Her statement was recorded, signed, validated. The weight of it nearly cracked the foundation of Keller's alibi-free existence. Still, he refused to speak. As pressure mounted, detectives pulled Lena's old case file out of storage, maps, sketches, statements, photos. Theo spread everything across the briefing table. The ghost of her final night seemed to reassemble itself piece by piece. He traced her route with a marker: tram station, sidewalk, crosswalk, apartment building. A straight, simple path. No blind corners. No detours. Yet she disappeared within this short stretch. Theo stared at a grainy CCTV still of Lena stepping off the tram. Behind her, partially obscured by the reflection of the station lights, was the faint outline of a man. The camera resolution was too low to identify him. But the posture, slightly hunched, hands in pockets, felt eerily familiar. When forensic analysts enhance the image using newer software, the outline sharpened just enough to reveal a few undeniable details: short hair, strong jawline, medium build. The room fell silent. The figure could be Keller. Could be. But not conclusively. The ambiguity carved a wound into the investigation, a wound that refused to close. Meanwhile, Keller's lawyer filed motions claiming all the evidence was circumstantial. A fingerprint means nothing, he argued. A photo found in a basement means nothing. A tram ticket means nothing. My client has no obligation to explain items planted or misinterpreted. The police are chasing shadows in an attempt to solve a cold case that was unsolvable from day one. But Berlin didn't believe it. Crowds surged outside the courthouse during every hearing. News outlets replayed the same phrases. Unexpected arrest. Chilling discovery. Community rattled. People who lived near Lena's old building spoke of a strange energy hanging over the street again, as if the ghosts of 2003 had awoken to watch the unfolding drama. Candlelight vigils returned, more crowded than ever. Messages appeared on walls: justice for Lena. Find the truth. No more silence. Inside the station, Hannah felt time tightening around her neck. We need something concrete, she told the team. Something that ties Keller directly to her disappearance, no room for interpretation. But what they found next blurred the line between certainty and fear. In Keller's digital archives, old CDs, outdated hard drives, encrypted folders, they uncovered a corrupted video file. After hours of reconstruction, digital forensics played it on the monitor. The screen flickered. Static buzzed. Then a shaky image appeared, a street at night, filmed from inside a car. The timestamp, the 3rd of December, 03, 22:16. The camera focused on a figure walking alone. A burgundy coat. A scarf pulled high. A tote bag. Lena. The footage followed her for 12 seconds before the recording abruptly cut off. 12 seconds that changed everything. 12 seconds that suggested surveillance. Intent. Presence. Theo exhaled shakily. He was there. He was right behind her. But again, the video didn't show Keller's face. Didn't show a car interior that could be traced. Didn't show who held the camera. Only the victim. Only the darkness following her. As investigators clung to this new fragment, Keller remained silent in his cell, eyes open, staring up at the ceiling like a man counting cracks only he could see. And Berlin, trapped between fear and fury, waited for the next revelation, because something about this case felt incomplete, as if a hand was reaching from the past, pulling the story deeper into the shadows. Something was missing. Something essential. Something that would soon surface, and when it did, it would tear the city open. The video haunted everyone who watched it. 12 seconds of shaky footage, 12 seconds where Lena walked alone, unaware, unprotected, 12 seconds that felt like a doorway into the final moments before she vanished. The room replayed it again and again, slowing it down frame by frame, hoping for a reflection, a shadow, a hint of the vehicle, anything that could anchor the recording to Keller's identity. But the darkness offered no cooperation. It swallowed details like a predator guarding its secrets. All that remained was the rhythm of her footsteps on the pavement, steady at first, then quickening, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough to make the heart tighten. As if she felt something. As if the night whispered a warning too soft to hear. Hannah watched the clip until her eyes burned. She could see patterns others didn't, but even she found herself sliding into uncertainty. Lena looked over her shoulder at the 7-second mark, just a small tilt of her head, but enough to suggest awareness. Did she notice a car creeping behind her? A figure following her? A presence too close? Or was it just instinct, the primal sense that someone's eyes were on her? Theo ran an enhancement, sharpening the street lights, reducing noise, isolating pixels. Still, no face. No license plate. No reflection in the windows. "This isn't an accident," he murmured. "Whoever filmed this didn't want to be seen." But that wasn't the part that unnerved them most. It was the timestamp, 22:16. 2 minutes after the last CCTV frame. And just 1 minute before Lena should have reached her building door. The video cut out exactly where the path narrowed, where old construction scaffolding blocked part of the sidewalk, where streetlights flickered unpredictably in 2003. A blind spot. A perfect blind spot. Someone knew that area well. Someone planned. And yet Keller remained silent. Inside his cell, he stared ahead without blinking, without moving, like a man carved from the same concrete that held him. He refused food for hours, accepted it only when pushed, spoke to no one, stared at the wall as if it held answers only he could decipher. Officers took turns monitoring him, and the longer they watched, the more uneasy they became. He didn't look like a man afraid of being caught. He looked like a man waiting for something. Something inevitable. Something approaching. Meanwhile, public pressure intensified. The news cycle fused itself to the case, every channel reciting the same chilling narrative: Berlin cold case reignites. Silent suspect holds hidden truth. On social media, users scrubbed old forum posts, digging up urban legends about the Friedrichshain district, stories of a shadowy figure seen near tram stations, of break-ins with no theft, of a man who watched women from a distance but never approached. Theories spiraled. Keller was a serial stalker. Keller was part of a ring. Keller was a scapegoat. Keller was the camera operator. Keller was the abductor. Keller was merely the last witness. The city didn't know what to believe anymore. And the investigation was about to get even darker. A forensic sweep of Keller's phone records revealed something impossible. His number had been inactive since 2014, long after Lena's disappearance, long after his divorce. But embedded inside the outdated SIM card logs were coordinates, cell tower pings from 2003 that placed him near Lena's tram stop on the night she vanished. Not conclusively. Not enough for a conviction. But enough to ignite a fire in the department. Still, something didn't fit. Theo pointed at the timeline. He was in the area. But look, this gap. Between 22:18 and 22:31, Keller's phone went dark. No signal. No data. No trace. It disappeared from the network exactly during the window when Lena vanished. The room went silent. The conclusion felt too clean, too perfect. And when evidence seems perfect, it usually isn't. Hannah shook her head. This could be manipulation. Someone could have spoofed his signal. Someone could have planted these logs retroactively. We need more. But the city wanted answers now. Journalists camped outside the station. Crowds held signs demanding Keller confess. Others accused the police of targeting an innocent man. The air crackled with tension, as if Berlin itself were holding its breath. Late that night, rain hammered against the windows of the police headquarters. The storm felt personal. As if the sky finally lost its patience with the secrets buried beneath it. And in the middle of that storm, something unexpected happened. A woman arrived at the station, soaked to the bone, shaking, clutching a small metal tin. Her name was Judith Bauman, a retired postal worker who once delivered mail to Lena's neighborhood. She insisted she had something that belongs to the case. Her voice trembled with guilt, as though she had carried a weight for too long. Hannah ushered her inside. Judith placed the tin on the table. Inside lay a folded letter, yellowed at the edges, unopened, addressed to Apartment 4B. Attention, L. Moritz. It was stamped December 2003. Unsent. Undelivered. Forgotten. I found it last month, Judith whispered. It slipped behind a drawer in the old sorting office. I was cleaning out the unit before retirement. When I saw the name, I remembered the posters. Hannah's hand steadied. She opened the letter carefully. It wasn't from a friend. Not from a relative. Not from a co-worker. It was from a man named J.K. A man thanking Lena for helping him with the sketches last week. A man saying he felt inspired after their conversation. A man apologizing if he came off strange the other night. A man who hoped she made it home safely. The final line chilled everyone in the room. I know the shortcut you take. I hope you feel safe there. The letter bore no return address. Only the initials. J.K. Theo spoke first. J.K. Could Keller be using an alias? Maybe his middle name starts with J. But records showed otherwise. Marcus had no J in any of his legal documents. Which meant another man existed. Another presence. Another connection to Lena. Another shadow walking the same street 16 years ago. Find him, Hannah said. The search began immediately. Databases, census records, postal archives. Thousands of Berlin residents shared the initials. But one name shot to the top of the list within minutes, Jonas Kramer, an illustrator, who lived 3 blocks from Lena in 2003. Jonas had reported his bike stolen the same week Lena vanished. A detail buried deep in old logs. He was interviewed once during the original case, because he claimed he saw nothing unusual that night. But what investigators missed back then hit them like a jolt now. Jonas Kramer disappeared in 2005. No forwarding address. No contact. No body. No trace. Just gone. Like Lena. Theo felt a chill crawl beneath his skin. Did he run? Was he taken? Was he involved? Theories erupted instantly. We need to reopen every record connected to Kramer, Hannah ordered. Every file. Every statement. Every report. Jonas's old landlord was contacted. An elderly man, forgetful but cooperative, who recalled Jonas leaving in a hurry, like he was being watched. Neighbors described Jonas as quiet, solitary, unpredictable. Some said he paced the hallway at night. Others said he sketched for hours with his curtains open, staring out at the street between strokes. One neighbor recalled seeing him follow Lena down the stairs once, but dismissed it as coincidence. But the detail that shattered the calm was this. In Jonas's old mailbox, still rusted, still unused, investigators found a stack of returned letters. Among them, a postcard forwarded from another city. It was addressed to Jonas. Sent in 2004. The handwriting matched the letter found in Judith's tin. The sender. Initials again, J.K. Someone else kept writing to him, Theo murmured. Someone who didn't know he was gone. The room felt colder. Someone with the same initials. Someone who knew the shortcut. Someone who interacted with both Lena and Jonas. Someone still unaccounted for. A third presence. A phantom. Suddenly Keller's silence no longer looked like guilt. It looked like fear. When Hannah returned to the holding cell, Keller was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He finally lifted his gaze when she entered. The first recognition he had shown. You weren't the only one watching her, Hannah said softly. There was someone else. Someone with your initials. Someone who knew her path. Keller's jaw tensed. We know about Jonas Kramer, she continued. We know he vanished too. And we know someone else was writing to them. Someone still out there. For the first time, Keller's breath hitched, barely, but unmistakably. There's another name in your notebook, Hannah pressed. One we haven't figured out yet. One you crossed out differently. His eyes flickered with something new. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Fear. Keller lowered his gaze to the floor, shoulders trembling just once, small, controlled, but enough to crack the facade he'd held for days. And in that moment, Hannah understood. Keller wasn't silent because he was hiding what he did. He was silent because he feared who else might still be out there. Someone who had been watching Lena. Someone who had been watching Jonas. Someone who might have watched Keller too. A shadow among shadows. A presence Berlin had never noticed. A predator who chose their victims carefully. And the cold case. It wasn't closing. It was widening. And the city was about to learn the truth that Keller had been terrified to speak. The tremor in Keller's shoulders was the first real sign of life he had shown since the arrest, the first fracture in his impenetrable silence. It wasn't guilt that tightened his breath, nor the burden of memory, it was unmistakable fear. A fear that didn't belong to a perpetrator, but to someone who believed a greater danger was still roaming freely through Berlin. Hannah saw it instantly. Theo saw it through the one-way glass. And the air in the room shifted, charged by the realization that everything they believed about this cold case might have been inverted from the start. They had been chasing the wrong shadows, assigning darkness to the man who carried it, rather than to the one who created it. Keller lifted his hands for the first time, pressing his palms together, fingertips trembling. He didn't speak, wouldn't speak, but the message was clear. Someone else had been in Lena's world. Someone who had watched her. Someone Keller had known about and feared. The silence grew unbearable. Hannah sat down across from him, lowering her voice. Marcus, if you're not the person we think you are, then the person you're afraid of is still out there. Tell me the name. Tell me who J.K. really is. Keller's eyes darted toward the corners of the room, not the mirror, but the ceiling, the vents, the door hinges. Not paranoia. Alertness. Spirit-level attentiveness. He wasn't checking for cameras. He was checking for gaps. Checking if they were being watched. A chill rippled through the room. Keller bowed his head and pressed his hands against his forehead, the gesture of a man crushed under a weight he couldn't articulate. Then, slowly, he shook his head, not to deny her, but to say he couldn't. A refusal born from terror. When he finally exhaled, the sound was small, strangled, the first emotional sound he'd made since his arrest. Hannah leaned closer. "Marcus, did you witness something that night?" Another tremble in his jaw. "Did you see someone else near her building?" A hitch in his breath. "Did someone threaten you afterward?" His fingers curled into fists. And then he lifted his gaze, wide, panicked, pleading. Not for mercy. Not for release. For protection. Hannah felt the truth settle like a stone in her stomach. Keller wasn't their monster. He was a survivor of something he'd never dared report. But survivors can be unreliable. Traumatized. Fragmented. And Keller's silence meant they were trapped in a maze with no map. Outside the interrogation room, the investigative team erupted into overlapping theories, voices rising above the storm still hammering the city. The letter from Judith. The disappearance of Jonas Kramer. The initials JK, that pointed in two directions, but explained nothing. The video filmed from within a car. The surveillance. The tram ticket preserved like a memento. Every piece connected, yet none formed the complete picture. Theo spread the evidence across the briefing table again, pacing, thinking aloud. What if Keller knew both of them, Lena and Jonas, but never approached? What if he only observed because someone else forced him to? Or threatened him? Blackmail, an officer asked. Coercion. Fear. Theories spiraled, but Hannah held up a hand. We are missing a link. And Keller knows it. The team dove deeper into the past, reopening the old databases, comparing missing persons to the addresses in Keller's notebook. The pattern became clearer. Each address corresponded to a location where someone vanished or reported being followed. But the dates weren't random, they lined up with shifts in apartment leases, tram schedules, and temporary road closures, as if someone used Berlin's changing infrastructure as camouflage. Someone who planned meticulously. Someone who studied movement. Someone who used the city like a hunting ground. At 3:14 a.m., a breakthrough came from an unlikely place. A retired detective from the original 2003 task force called the station after seeing breaking news. His voice was raspy with age, but sharp with urgency. You're looking at the wrong man, he said. Back then, we investigated someone else. Someone who disappeared from records before we could question him. Who? Hannah demanded. A beat of silence. A freelance sketch artist named Johann Kessler. The initials hit like a jolt. J.K. Not Jonas Kramer. Not Marcus Keller. Another man entirely. The detective continued. We had a report of a man sketching women at tram stations without their knowledge. Someone said he followed them home under the pretext of studying movement. He lived in a sublet, no permanent address. Vanished a month after Lena did. We could never locate him. The room went dead quiet. Theo whispered, and his initials matched the letter. The retired detective let out a weary sigh. We thought he was a harmless eccentric, until Lena disappeared. But by then, he was gone. The call ended abruptly, leaving the team with a new ghost to chase. Hannah turned to her officers. Find everything on Johann Kessler. Now? The city files were thin, a renter with no permanent ID, paid in cash, moved constantly. His landlords described him as polite, soft-spoken, a loner. Clients remembered him as brilliant with portraits, but terrible with deadlines. A man who observed people with an intensity that made them uncomfortable. And one more detail. Kessler used to ride the same tram line Lena took. Every night. While the team scrambled to build a profile, Keller lay awake in his cell, breathing shallowly, fingers digging into the mattress. His eyes flicked toward the hallway when the lights dimmed. And for a brief moment, brief enough to be mistaken for imagination, he seemed to hear footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Passing outside his cell. He squeezed his eyes shut, trembling. Whoever haunted his past, whoever made him afraid to speak, might not be gone. Meanwhile, Theo uncovered something buried deep in an archived hard drive, an image file labeled OnlyView_03. It had been overlooked in the initial review. When he opened it, his stomach lurched. It was a sketch. A sketch of Lena. Detailed. Tender. Disturbingly intimate. She was drawn standing at the tram station, scarf blowing in the wind, her eyes half-turned, as if glancing back at someone. The signature at the bottom corner read, J.K. The date beside it made Theo's heart hammer. The 2nd of December, 03, one day before the disappearance. The implications were undeniable. Someone had been close enough to draw her from life. Someone who watched her long before Keller ever appeared. Someone who signed their work with the same initials that haunted every new clue. Theo printed the sketch and ran to Hannah. When she saw it, she went pale. This wasn't just stalking, she whispered. This was fixation. The sketch was too detailed for a passing glance. Too intimate for coincidence. The lines suggested hours of observation. Perhaps days. Perhaps longer. Suddenly the tram ticket in Keller's basement, preserved so carefully, took on new meaning. Maybe it wasn't a trophy. Maybe it was a reminder. A warning. A relic of something he couldn't escape. Theo stared at the lines of Lena's face. If Kessler drew her like this, how long was he following her? No one answered. Because the truth was becoming terrifyingly clear. Keller may have witnessed something that night, something Kessler did. He may have followed Lena not to harm her, but to keep an eye on her because he knew someone else was hunting. Someone he couldn't stop. Silence can be guilt. But it can also be survival. At 5:12 a.m., another shock hit the department when an officer found a message submitted anonymously through the police tip line. The timestamp was 4:47 a.m. The message had no text, only an attachment. A photo of the tram station, taken just hours earlier. And standing beneath the street lamp was a lone figure in a hooded jacket, facing the camera, but obscured by shadow. The rain blurred the details, but the posture, the slight tilt of the head, the relaxed stance, the hand holding what looked like a sketchbook, sent a cold wave through everyone who saw it. The caption, typed automatically by the system, read, Sender requested anonymity. The implication was unmistakable. Someone had returned to the scene. Someone who wanted the police to know. Someone bold enough to stand in the open. Hannah stared at the image, heart pounding. Is this Keller? No, Theo said quietly. Keller is still in custody. Then who the hell is this? No one dared say the name out loud. But they all thought it. Johann Kessler. A ghost the city believed had vanished. A predator who watched, sketched, followed. A man who might still be alive. And if he was watching the investigation, he knew Keller was talking. Or trying to. The clock was ticking. Hannah rushed back to the holding cells, determined to get the truth from Keller before it was too late. But when she reached his door, her breath caught. Keller was sitting upright, wide-eyed, trembling violently, staring at the vent above his bed. The vent cover was twisted, just slightly. Disturbed. As if someone had touched it. Or tried to. Hannah stepped inside. "Marcus, what happened? Did someone come in here?" Keller's lips parted. A broken whisper escaped. The first words he'd spoken in 16 years. "He's here." The words hit the air like a detonation, soft, shaky, almost fragile, yet powerful enough to rip through the room, the hallway, the entire investigation. "He's here." 2 syllables that carried 16 years of fear. 2 syllables that shattered every assumption. 2 syllables that forced everyone to accept a truth more terrifying than anything they had prepared for. The predator wasn't a ghost from the past. He wasn't a file buried in an archive. He wasn't a rumor, or a theory, or an online speculation. He wasn't gone. He was in Berlin. He was close. Maybe closer than anyone realized. Hannah's pulse hammered as she stepped toward Keller, careful not to startle him. He sat rigid on the bed, staring at the twisted vent, with an expression so raw it stripped away every illusion that he might be the villain in this story. His fear wasn't performative, it was primal. The kind of fear only someone hunted for years could understand. Sweat slicked his forehead, and his hands trembled uncontrollably, knuckles white against the mattress. "Marcus," Hannah said gently, "look at me. Did someone come into this room? Did someone touch that vent?" Keller didn't blink. His voice cracked as he repeated, "He's here, he's here." A cold ripple passed through Hannah's spine. She motioned urgently for the officers outside. Within seconds, the hallway filled with footsteps, radios crackling, commands shouted. A full sweep of the holding area began: vents, locks, corridors, security feeds. Nothing showed signs of forced entry, but the vent screws were indeed misaligned, turned halfway out as if manipulated by someone with time, precision and intent. Theo arrived, breathless. "Is he saying Kessler was here?" Keller flinched at the name, squeezing his eyes shut like the sound itself caused pain. Hannah lowered her voice. "Marcus, did Kessler ever threaten you?" His breathing quickened. His fingers dug deeper into the mattress. "Did he follow you? Watch you? Hurt you?" A tear slipped down his cheek, a single drop, absorbed instantly into the fabric. Finally, he whispered, "He said he'd make me disappear too." The room fell silent. Keller wasn't a suspect. He was a witness. A terrified one. Theo felt something tighten in his chest. "We need him protected. Now?" But the question that lingered, dark and heavy, was this. If Kessler wanted Keller gone, why wait 16 years? The station was placed on lockdown. Officers secured every exit, every vent, every camera blind spot. The rain continued outside, drumming on the windows as if the storm itself wanted in. Thunder rolled across the city like a warning. Berlin had become a stage illuminated by flashes of cold light, and somewhere among the shadows, a predator moved with perfect confidence. The anonymous photo at the tram station replayed in Theo's mind. The figure in the hood. The sketchbook. The posture of someone unbothered by exposure. Someone who didn't fear being seen. Someone who had practiced invisibility so well that recognition was meaningless. Hannah gathered the team for an emergency briefing. Evidence lined the walls, maps of the tram route, Lena's last known steps, Jonas Kramer's disappearance timeline, Keller's notebook, Kessler's sketch. The pieces vibrated with new meaning. Keller isn't our suspect, Hannah said. He's a link. A witness to something he couldn't report. Someone Kessler may have used or tormented. Why him? An officer asked. Because predators like Kessler don't hunt blindly, she replied. They choose people they can control. People they can break. People who won't talk. A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Theo stood by the board, staring at the map of Berlin. Kessler's patterns are deliberate. He follows routine. Infrastructure. Movement. If he's back, he's watching us work. He wants us to know he's close. Another officer added, or he wants Keller to crack before he does. Theo exhaled. Which is why Keller finally spoke. Back in the holding cell, Keller hunched over, rocking slightly. When Hannah approached again, he didn't lift his head. Marcus, she said quietly, you're safe here. He shook his head instantly. No one is safe from him. Hannah crouched to meet his eye level. Tell me what happened in 2003. Anything. We need to find him before he finds you. But Keller only stared at the door, pupils dilated. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Keller whispered, I saw him that night. The room seemed to stop breathing. Theo moved closer. Where? Keller swallowed hard. Behind the scaffolding near her building. He was waiting. Waiting for Lena? Hannah asked. Keller nodded slowly. And you followed her too? Keller's voice cracked. To warn her. To tell her he was back. The confession hit like a hammer. You knew him from before? Theo asked. Keller nodded again, tears streaking his face. From where? A beat. Then, he used to draw me. The words cut the air open. Keller continued, voice ragged. Years before Lena. He would sketch me at the station in cafes on the tram. He said he liked my face. Said I had quiet bones. I thought he was strange. But harmless. Until the night he followed me home. Theo stiffened. Did he threaten you then? Keller closed his eyes. No. He didn't need to. He just watched me sleep. The room went cold. Hannah whispered, how do you know he watched you sleep? Because he left a sketch on my pillow, Keller said. Of me, in the same position I woke up in. The horror was suffocating. Kessler wasn't merely a stalker. He was a phantom who entered homes without breaking locks, without alerting alarms, without leaving marks except the ones he wanted his victims to find. Keller, Hannah said carefully, did he ever talk about Lena? Keller nodded again, trembling. He said she had a face that knew secrets. He watched her for months. I tried to warn her once, but she didn't know who I was. She thought I was the threat. She avoided me. What about Jonas? Theo asked. Was he involved too? Keller let out a hollow, broken sound. Jonas tried to go to the police. He vanished 2 weeks later. The realization hit with brutal clarity. Keller hadn't been silent out of guilt. He'd been silent to survive. As dawn approached, Berlin's storm finally began to soften, but the tension within the station only grew. The team worked urgently, tracing old leases, old gallery connections, art school archives, every possible link to Kessler. They found he had attended an obscure sketch academy in Kreuzberg, known for producing talented illustrators with eccentric tendencies. Former classmates described him as brilliant, obsessive, disturbingly intense. One detail stood out. Kessler specialized in drawing people without their knowledge. He called it capturing their unguarded truth. Then, abruptly, he left the school. No forwarding address. No record of employment. No documented income. He vanished into the city's fabric. A perfect ghost. At 6:47 a.m., an alert flashed on the monitor in the operations room. Motion detected, basement storage level 2. Time, 6:43. Theo frowned. Who's down there at this hour? No one, an officer answered. That floor's restricted. They pulled up the footage. For 5 seconds, the camera flickered. Static blurred the screen. Then a figure appeared. Hooded. Calm. Slow-moving. He turned toward the camera, not enough to reveal his face, but enough to reveal the object in his hand. A sketchbook. He lifted it slightly, almost like a wave. Then the lights in the basement went out entirely. The screen cut to black. The officers scrambled, radios blared, teams rushed to the lower floors, but when they reached the basement, the corridor was empty. No forced entry. No footprints. No trace of the intruder. But on the floor beneath the camera, placed precisely in the center of the hallway, lay a single sheet of paper. A sketch. Of Keller. Sleeping. In his holding cell. Drawn with exquisite detail. Drawn from an angle only possible. If the artist had been inside the room. Theo felt his voice catch. He's taunting us. But Hannah shook her head, face drained of all color. No. He's not taunting. She pointed at the corner of the sketch. The timestamp written in delicate cursive. 3:12 a.m., while Keller slept. Hours before Keller whispered, "He's here." Theo's blood ran cold. Kessler wasn't watching from afar. He wasn't lurking in shadows. He wasn't waiting for an opportunity. He'd already been inside the station. Inside the secured holding area. Inside Keller's cell. And no one saw him. No one stopped him. No one even knew he existed. Hannah whispered the only truth left. He's not just back. Her voice trembled. He never left. The realization settled over the station like a suffocating fog. Kessler hadn't slipped past their security. He had moved through it, over it, inside it, like someone who had studied every weakness long before the investigation reopened. The sketch found on the basement floor felt like a message carved directly into their nerves, a reminder that while they hunted him, he moved freely around them. Invisible. Untouchable. Always a step ahead. Keller stared at the sketch with hollow eyes, every line confirming what he had known for years. There was nowhere Kessler couldn't reach. Nowhere he couldn't watch. No boundary he wouldn't cross. His breath became shallow again, and he pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, as if trying to hold his skull together. He was here, Keller whispered. He never stopped watching. The station surged into high alert. Officers swept every corner, every vent, every hallway. Access logs were checked, cameras monitored, wires tested, doors reinforced. But the sense of intrusion clung to the air. As if Kessler's presence remained in the very walls. As if he had breathed into the rooms and left something lingering behind. Hannah gathered the team in the operations room. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with controlled panic. We now have confirmation that Kessler infiltrated this building. He left a sketch timestamped 3:12 a.m. That means he entered Keller's cell undetected. How is that possible? An officer demanded. Every door is locked. Every corridor monitored. Theo answered quietly, unless he accessed the maintenance ducts. The building is old. Some sections connect to the underground service tunnels. Hannah nodded grimly. If he used the ducts, we need to map every entry point. Every possible route. He could be slipping in from the outside, a basement grate, a storm drain, a forgotten access hatch. The realization sent a shiver through the room. They weren't dealing with a typical suspect. They were dealing with a man who navigated the city like a ghost, with instincts honed by years of stalking, watching, entering and exiting unseen. To him, walls were merely suggestions. Theo pulled out the map of the police headquarters, an architectural blueprint decades old. Here, he said, pointing at a section in faded blue ink. These ducts connect directly to the sublevels. If someone squeezed through, he could reach the holding cells, Hannah finished. And the basement, Theo added. And possibly even the evidence rooms. The implications were chilling. They scrambled to secure everything. But an uncomfortable question hung in the air. If Kessler could access the building so easily, what else had he touched? As dawn crept in, painting the horizon with a dull, exhausted grey, Berlin awoke to a day that felt heavier than the one before. News of Keller's trembling confession leaked to the press. Headlines blared across every screen. Silent suspect speaks, mysterious figure infiltrates station. Cold case erupts as unseen presence haunts investigation. Berlin in fear, is the true predator still among us? Crowds gathered again outside the station, faces pale, voices frantic. Parents held their children tighter. Commuters scanned their surroundings with darting eyes. The tram line where Lena vanished felt cursed now, an open wound in the city's memory. Inside, the team dug deeper into Kessler's past. They traced old art schools, old landlords, old classmates. One former instructor finally responded to their messages. His voice trembled through the call. Johann was difficult, the man said. Brilliant, yes. But he had a way of observing people that made even seasoned artists uncomfortable. He didn't draw what he saw. He drew what he wanted them to be. What he imagined behind their eyes. Did he ever show signs of aggression? Hannah asked. No. Not physical. But he watched people long after the model sessions ended. Followed them home sometimes. He called it studying movement. But his sketches, they weren't normal. Too intimate. Too precise. As if he drew them while they slept. The room chilled again. Theo leaned forward. Did he ever mention anyone named Lena Moritz? Or Jonas Kramer? Or Marcus Keller? A pause. He mentioned a man named Keller once, the instructor said slowly. Said he had a face that carried stories. Johann liked unusual faces. Faces that made him imagine what they hid. Another pause, then a softer, darker tone. And he once told me that some people don't appreciate being seen. Hannah's heart tightened. Meaning what? The instructor inhaled shakily. Meaning he felt insulted when people avoided him. He said he wanted to sketch them in the dark instead. Where they couldn't hide. The call ended. Nobody spoke. The truth sharpened into something lethal. Kessler didn't just stalk. He studied. He consumed. He fixated. His drawings weren't souvenirs, they were manifestations of control. He captured people on paper the way others trapped insects in jars. And when he felt unseen, When someone rejected him, he didn't simply disappear. He made them disappear. Hannah returned to Keller's cell with new urgency. If anyone knew more about Kessler's patterns, it was the man Kessler had tormented first. Marcus, she began gently, we need to know how you escaped him. How you survived. Keller shook his head violently. I didn't escape. He let me go. Hannah frowned. Why? Why would he let one person go and not the others? Keller's breathing grew ragged. Because I followed the rules. Because I didn't look him in the eyes. Because I pretended I never saw him. I lived like a shadow. I made myself small. Did he ever confront you? Hannah pressed. Keller hesitated. Then whispered, once. Theo leaned closer. What happened? Keller lifted his shaking hands, showing faint scars across the knuckles, thin, pale lines. He gave me these. He said I needed to learn what it feels like to be corrected. Keller's voice cracked. Then he told me if I ever spoke to anyone about him, he'd take my face. The room stiffened. Hannah felt nausea rise in her throat. What does that mean? Keller squeezed his eyes shut. He draws what he wants people to be. And when the drawing is done, he tries to make the real person match it. The horror sank in with a chilling clarity. Kessler didn't just stalk. He sculpted human beings like living art projects. He pursued those he wanted to correct. Those whose faces haunted him. Those he believed needed reshaping. Lena. Jonas. Keller. And now who else? At 8:52 a.m., another alert jolted the operations room. A detective reviewing old transport footage from 2003 found a clip previously dismissed due to corruption. But when the team enhanced it with modern software, the blurred figure walking behind Lena became more visible. Not enough for a facial ID, but enough to reveal something chilling. He wasn't alone. He was holding something. A sketchbook. The same sketchbook seen in the basement hours earlier. A perfect match. Theo's voice dropped to a whisper. He's been doing the same thing since the beginning. Following. Watching. Drawing. Then acting. Hannah looked at the screen, dread coiling around her lungs. This isn't random. He has a cycle. A pattern. Every disappearance happens near a tram route, Theo added. Every victim has a sketch. Every time, he leaves a mark only he understands. And now he's back, Hannah said. No, Keller's voice echoed softly from behind them. They turned. Keller stood in the doorway, escorted by officers, his face pale but determined. He never left, Keller said again. He just changed where he hides. Hannah stepped toward him. Where does he hide, Marcus? Where does he go? Keller's eyes filled with terror, then resolve. There's a place he used to take me. A place where he said the city couldn't hear us. A place he said was perfect for studying people who don't know they are being watched. Theo's heart pounded. Where? Keller swallowed, tears welling. The tunnels, he whispered. Under the tram lines. Old drainage tunnels. Abandoned service paths. He knows them all. Hannah stiffened. Marcus, can you show us? Keller hesitated. Then nodded. Slowly. Fearfully. But decisively. Hannah turned to the team. Gear up. We move now. As they prepared, the room buzzed with urgency. Weapons checked. Lights loaded. Maps stuttered. Radios synced. Theo glanced at Keller, who stood trembling but resolute. He whispered, "Are you sure you can do this?" Keller didn't look at him. He stared at the floor. "He'll know we are coming," Keller said softly. Hannah zipped her tactical jacket. "Let him." "No," Keller said, voice breaking as he lifted his eyes. "He wants us to." The tunnels breathed like a living organism beneath Berlin, vast, decaying arteries running under the tram lines, forgotten by most, remembered only by those who needed places where no one listened. Keller walked between Hannah and Theo, his hands trembling at his sides, but his stride steady enough to prove that he knew the path by memory, not by map. Every few steps, he glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting a shadow to detach itself from the darkness and follow. The deeper they went, the less the city above seemed to exist. The hum of the trams faded. The echo of their boots stretched into infinity. The cold thickened, sliding beneath their collars. "He used to bring me here," Keller whispered, voice cracking. "He said the city forgot these tunnels. Said they belonged to people like him." Hannah's flashlight cut across the dripping walls, graffiti from decades ago, rusted ladders, drain pipes that groaned with each echo. "How far did he take you?" Keller swallowed. "Farther than anyone should go. He said this place let him think. Let him decide what people needed to become." Theo shuddered. "He talked like that a lot." Keller nodded slowly. He believed people were only honest when they didn't know he was watching. That their truth lived in the moments they thought were private. He said the city made people lie, so he went underground to find the truth. His voice broke on the last word. They continued deeper. The tunnel split into two shadowed branches. Keller pointed left instantly, his breath tightening. "That way." "He always went that way." Theo examined the ground. Old footprints, smeared by moisture but unmistakably human, led into the left passage. Fresh imprints led over old ones, clearer, more defined. Hannah crouched. "These were made recently," she whispered. "Hours ago." Meaning Kessler wasn't merely haunting the investigation. He was preparing for them. They followed the trail. The tunnel narrowed, the ceiling dropping lower, the air growing colder and wetter. Pipes rattled overhead, as if something crawled inside them. Every sound amplified until it was impossible to tell what was real and what was the tunnel breathing. Theo adjusted his headset. "Units above ground, report status." "Static." He tried again. "More static." Hannah's stomach twisted. "Signal dies down here. We keep moving." Keller slowed, hugging himself. He always said once you're inside his space, the city can't hear you. No one can. Theo whispered, "That's exactly what I didn't want to hear." They turned another corner. The flashlight beams cut through the darkness, landing on something that made everyone freeze. Paper. Hundreds of sheets of paper. Nailed to the walls, scattered across the floor, plastered to pipes. Sketches. Portraits. Drawings of faces, men, women, children, commuters, strangers, shadows. Some sketched with exquisite detail, others fragmented, smeared, torn. But the most chilling detail wasn't the number. It was the subject. Every face had eyes that seemed to follow them. Every drawing had been rendered with an intimacy that felt invasive, as if the artist had been inches from their subjects while they slept or cried or simply existed. Lena's face appeared in multiple sketches, some serene, others fearful, others incomplete, as if he had drawn her from memory in the dark. Jonah's was there too. And Keller. in dozens of versions. His younger face trembled on the page, frozen in terror, as if Kessler had drawn him while he sobbed, slept, begged. Theo's breath hitched. He's been collecting them, cataloguing them. Hannah stepped forward, her flashlight trembling. No. He's been studying them. Keller pressed his back to the wall, shaking so hard his legs nearly buckled. He made me stand here once. Right here. While he compared the drawing to me. He said he needed to correct the details. Theo turned to him. Did he hurt you? Keller didn't answer. He didn't have to. The scars on his knuckles, the tremor in his breath, the way he couldn't look at the drawings, these were answers enough. They continued down the gallery of horror. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, an old maintenance hub where several tunnels intersected. A metal table sat in the center. A stool. A lantern. Dozens of charcoal pencils arranged in a neat row. And on the table, a fresh sketch. Still smudged with dust. Still smelling of charcoal. Still drying. A portrait of Keller in the interrogation room. Drawn from the angle of the mirror. Keller staggered backward. Theo swore under his breath. He's watching us, Hannah whispered. He was inside the station longer than we thought. Theo circled the table, examining the sketch. We've been reacting to him this entire time. Every step we take, he's already taken 3. Hannah scanned the chamber. Her flashlight landed on another detail, a long coil of rope. Old. Frayed. Stiff. Next to it, an abandoned coat hanger bent into the shape of a hook. And beneath it, a single hair clip. Burgundy. Hannah's breath caught. Lena, she whispered. Keller let out a broken sound, burying his face in his hands. He brought her here. I knew it. I knew it. The chamber grew colder. The silence thickened. It felt as though something watched from the dark edges of the room, breathing quietly, patiently, savoring their fear. Theo scanned the perimeter. If he used this place, where did he take them afterward? Keller lifted his head. His expression had changed. Something haunted flickered in his eyes. He didn't take them away, Keller whispered. What do you mean? Theo pressed. Keller hugged his chest, trying to steady himself. He said the city hides its secrets underground. Said people don't look down so they don't see what's right below them. The implication hung like a blade. Hannah exhaled shakily. Marcus, are you saying? There are deeper tunnels, Keller said. Ones that aren't mapped. He told me he found them. He said that's where people become beautiful. Theo shivered. Beautiful how? Keller's voice cracked. Silent. They pushed deeper. The tunnel sloped downward, the floor slick with moisture. Pipes wheezed above their heads. At times the ceiling dropped so low they had to crouch, Keller trembling violently every time his shoulder brushed the wall. Theo checked his watch. They'd lost track of time. Minutes. Hours. The underground swallowed all sense of rhythm. The air grew colder still. Then Hannah's flashlight caught something ahead. Scratches. Long, jagged marks carved into the concrete wall, as if by fingernails or tools. Hundreds of them. Desperate. Violent. And beneath them, letters. Names. Some legible. Some half erased. Some carved so deeply the concrete had chipped around them. Lena Moritz. Jonas K. Marika. T holes. Unidentified. 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 Theo's voice trembled. These are victims. Keller stepped forward, hand shaking as he touched the name Jonas K. He didn't run away. He didn't get free. Hannah placed a hand on Keller's shoulder. We'll find out what happened. But Keller shook his head. No, he whispered. You won't. Why? Hannah asked. Keller's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. Because he said people only leave his tunnels in one of two ways. Corrected. Theo felt ice crawl up his spine. And the second way? Keller closed his eyes. Forgotten. A sound broke the silence. A light tap. Then another. Then a slow, deliberate dragging sound echoing from somewhere beyond the next bend. Something metallic scraping lightly across concrete. Hannah raised her hand. Everyone froze. The sound grew louder. Closer. Rhythmic. Scrape. 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 Theo's breath hitched. What is that? Keller's face drained of all color. He whispered one word. One name. A name that chilled the entire tunnel. Johann. The scraping stopped abruptly. Silence swallowed the passage. Hannah raised her flashlight, beam trembling. Then. A voice. Soft. Calm. Gentle. A voice that echoed through the tunnels like a lullaby turned wrong. I knew you would come. Theo stiffened. The voice was close, impossibly close, yet its source remained hidden. Marcus, the voice continued, almost tender, you never learn to stay away from places that don't belong to you. Keller shook violently, teeth clattering. He's here, he's here, he's here. The voice shifted tone, now directed at the investigators. And you the ones who want to see what lies underground. Come closer. I have something to show you. Hannah raised her weapon. Kessler. Step out where we can see you. Silence. Then a low, chilling laugh drifted through the darkness. You already have. Something moved beyond the flashlight's reach. A shadow sweeping across the far wall. Theo swung his light toward the motion. Nothing. Then the voice whispered, closer now. You're walking the wrong direction. Hannah stared at her, breathing. What do you want? A long pause. Then, softly. To finish the drawing. A cold realization struck Theo. He wants Keller. No, Keller whispered, trembling uncontrollably. But Kessler's voice cut him off. I want all of you. And then. The lights went out. Complete, suffocating darkness swallowed the tunnel. And the only sound left was Keller's scream. Darkness slammed into the tunnel like a physical force, total, depthless, devouring. It swallowed every outline, every breath, every tremor. Theo felt the blackness close over his eyes so completely he couldn't tell if they were open or shut. Keller screamed, a raw, piercing sound that ricocheted off the concrete walls and multiplied until it felt like the tunnels themselves were screaming back. Hannah's training kicked in. Flashlights. Reboot, now. But her voice sounded small, distant, as if buried under tons of earth. Theo fumbled frantically with his flashlight, fingers trembling. Nothing. The beam was dead. Not broken, drained. As if the power itself had been yanked out of the air. Keller sobbed in the darkness. He cut the power, he's here. Marcus, stay still. Hannah ordered, but her voice shook despite her effort to anchor the fear. A whisper slithered through the darkness, close, too close, brushing the back of their necks though no breath touched their skin. Don't be afraid. Darkness shows the truth. Theo spun toward the voice, but there was nothing, no movement, no glow, no trace. Only the shallow sound of Keller's frantic breathing, and the distant drip 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 of water falling from old pipes. Hannah lifted her weapon, steadying her stance, listening for the slightest shift in the air. "Johann," she said, her voice low, "step into the open." The reply came instantly. "I am in the open." Then something scraped against metal, a slow, deliberate drag that seemed inches away from them. Theo's heart thundered. Was Kessler right there? Behind them? Above them? Had he climbed the pipes? Slipped between shadows? Keller whimpered. "Please, please don't come closer." The whisper returned, dripping from the ceiling like poison. "Marcus, you survived because I let you survive. But you broke the rule. You brought others into my space." Theo forced his nerves to steady. "Where are you, Kessler? What do you want?" Silence stretched, long and suffocating. Then, soft laughter, echoing from multiple directions at once. "You're standing in my gallery. What do you think I want?" Hannah's finger tightened on the trigger. A sound sliced through the darkness, footsteps, light and intentional, circling them like a predator deciding where to strike. Then something brushed past Theo's jacket. Cold. Weightless. A fingertip. He recoiled violently. "He touched me, Hannah, he's moving around us." Keller let out another choked scream. Suddenly a faint glow appeared in the darkness, bluish, trembling, floating near the far wall. Theo blinked hard. It wasn't a flashlight. It was something else. A phone screen. A video playing. Hannah recognized it instantly. The 12-second clip, the footage of Lena walking home. Except it wasn't the old version. This one had sound. Footsteps behind her. Breathing. The soft scratch of pencil on paper. "No," Theo whispered. "He filmed more than we ever saw." The screen illuminated a faint outline, just enough to show a pair of eyes reflected in the glass before the light winked out again. Theo stumbled backward. Those eyes weren't afraid. They weren't panicked. They were studying him. Hannah stared at her, breathing. "Kessler, you think darkness protects you. But we are not lost." Kessler's voice came in a breath. "You are exactly where I want you." Suddenly something metallic clanged near the floor, violently. The shockwave rattled the concrete. Theo shouted, "What was that?" Keller gasped, "That's how he starts, he disorients, he." A burst of dim orange light flickered ahead. A lantern flared to life, placed on the ground by invisible hands. The sudden glow carved the tunnel into jagged shadows, and revealed something that turned Theo's stomach to ice. Sketches. Hundreds of them. Arranged in a ring around the lantern like a ritual. And in the center was a fresh drawing. A portrait of Hannah. Drawn with surgical precision. Drawn from inches away. Drawn today. Theo whispered, "He's been watching us since we entered the tunnels." Keller covered his face, shaking uncontrollably. Hannah stepped forward, jaw tight. "Show yourself." Her command sliced through the tunnel. The lantern flickered. Then, slowly, impossibly, a silhouette emerged behind it. A figure standing just outside the ring of drawings, half shrouded in shadow. Not fully visible, but enough to sense the shape of him. Tall. Lean. Still. Unblinking. Theo raised his weapon instinctively. Kessler didn't move. He simply tilted his head, observing them the way someone studies a painting, quiet, contemplative, emotionless. "You came farther than I expected," he said softly, his voice neither loud nor soft, just everywhere. "Most people never reach this place." Hannah lifted her chin. "You murdered Lena Moritz." Kessler didn't react. "You took Jonas Kramer." He blinked once. "You terrorized Keller for years." A faint smile curved his lips. Terror is a word for people who fear the truth. Marcus fears his own reflection. I only showed it to him. Theo stepped forward. "What truth are you talking about?" Kessler raised a hand. The gesture was slow, controlled, gentle, yet chilling in its confidence. "The truth people hide. The truth their faces betray when they think no one is watching. Lena had a beautiful truth. Jonas had a fearful one. Marcus," he glanced at Keller, "had a broken one." Keller shook violently, tears slipping down his cheeks. Hannah's voice hardened. "You watched them. You stalked them. You abducted them." Kessler tilted his head again, thoughtful. "You use small words for small ideas. I don't abduct. I collect." Theo exhaled sharply. "Collect?" Kessler stepped slightly closer, not enough to reveal his full face, but enough that the lantern's edge brushed the hem of his coat. "I draw people as they truly are," he said softly. "And then I preserve that truth. I keep them safe from the lies they live above ground." Hannah's voice rose. "Where are they?" Kessler's eyes gleamed. "All around you." The air seemed to thicken. Theo felt a cold wave shift the room. He looked down. The floor beneath the lantern wasn't dirt. It wasn't concrete. It was a hatch. A metal hatch. With chains. Locks. Smeared fingerprints. Deep scratches. Kessler murmured, "People fear darkness because they believe it blinds them. But darkness reveals what light conceals." Hannah raised her weapon. "Step away from the hatch." Kessler smiled faintly. "Why?" "It's what you came for." Theo's pulse pounded. "Open it, and this ends now." "Oh, it does end now," Kessler whispered. "But not the way you think." He took one graceful step backward. The lantern flickered. Hannah tightened her grip. "Don't move." Kessler spread his hands slightly, almost welcoming. "If you want answers, if you want to see what truly became of them, open it." Theo hesitated. "Hannah, don't, this feels wrong." "It's a trap," Keller whispered, sinking to his knees. "He wants you to open it. He wants you to see." Kessler's smile deepened. "Yes. See?" Hannah stepped forward slowly, weapon raised. Her hand reached out, trembling. Theo grabbed her wrist. "We don't know what's down there." Hannah met his eyes, fear in hers, but resolve too. "We need proof. Without it, he walks free." Kessler's whisper slid past their ears. "Open the hatch." Silence. Then Hannah pulled the first lock. It snapped open with a metallic crack. The sound echoed down the tunnel like a death knell. Kessler watched with serene anticipation. Theo's voice strained. "Hannah, please." She undid the second lock. Then the third. Metal groaned. Air sucked downward as if the hatch led into a void. Finally, She gripped the handle. Keller screamed, "Don't." But it was too late. Hannah pulled. The hatch yawned open. A blast of ice-cold air surged upward, carrying a smell so thick, so foul, so ancient that Theo staggered back, gagging. Keller collapsed, sobbing hysterically. The tunnel seemed to pulse with something alive, something that had waited too long below the surface. And in the darkness beneath the hatch, eyes, dozens of them, staring up, not alive, not blinking, drawn. Hundreds of drawn eyes painted on the walls of the pit, led over and over, staring, watching, consuming. Theo whispered, voice hollow, What is this?" Kessler whispered back, his voice warm, almost affectionate. "My gallery." Hannah stepped backward, breath shaking. Then a soft scraping rose from within the pit. Movement. Shifting. Something dragging. Something that shouldn't move. Something wearing fabric. And then a hand emerged from the darkness. A human hand. Thin. Pale. Trembling. Reaching upward. Theo froze. Hannah's heart stopped. Keller fell silent. And Kessler whispered, "One of them is still alive." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The pale hand reaching from the darkness was so impossibly thin it looked almost boneless, skin stretched over trembling tendons, knuckles protruding, nails cracked and caked with grime. It grasped blindly, reaching for air, for salvation, for anything. The lantern's weak glow flickered across the fingers, revealing faint charcoal smudges along the edges, as if the hand itself had been dragged through sketches. Theo froze, breath caught in his throat. "Someone's alive, Hannah, someone's alive down there." Keller collapsed backward, choking on a sob so sharp it echoed through the tunnel. No, this isn't possible," he said. "None survived," he said. Kessler watched them with serene amusement, his silhouette motionless except for the slight tilt of his head. "Hope is a powerful illusion," he murmured. "It brings people closer than fear ever could." Hannah's instinct screamed at her, but duty forced her forward. She crouched near the hatch, weapon raised with one hand while the other reached cautiously toward the trembling limb. "Hello," she whispered. "Can you hear me? We're here to help, hold on." The hand jerked violently, retreating an inch before stretching upward again in a desperate, animalistic plea. A faint sound rose from the pit, a rasped breath, dry and cracked, as if dragged across broken glass. It wasn't a word. It wasn't coherent. But it was human. Theo moved beside her. "We need backup. We need medics. We need—" "Our radios don't work down here," Hannah reminded him, voice tight. "The tunnels block signal," Keller whispered, trembling against the wall. "He always said once you're below the city, even time forgets you." Theo's jaw clenched, adrenaline drowning reason. "We need to pull them out." "Now?" "Yes," Kessler said softly, stepping just close enough for the lantern to catch the corner of his face, but not enough to fully reveal it. "Pull them out. See what I preserved for you." Hannah ignored him, leaning farther over the pit. But the darkness swallowed the light just inches below the rim. It felt bottomless. "Theo, help me lift them." They each grabbed for the hand. But the hand recoiled. Not because it feared them, but because it feared something below. A deeper scraping rose from the pit, another movement, another shape shifting below. A whisper of fabric. A drag of skin. Multiple breaths layered atop one another. Theo's heart froze as he realized. There wasn't just one person down there. There were more. Many more. The pit exhaled the scent of rot and damp charcoal. A scent that had lived underground too long. Theo felt bile climb his throat. There are others, Hannah, there are others alive. Keller shook uncontrollably. Alive doesn't mean saved. Kessler stepped closer, still hidden by shadow. I never kill them. I simply preserve them. They understand the silence. They become part of the gallery. Theo spun toward him. You imprisoned them. Kessler smiled faintly. Words like imprison and free are meaningless down here. Down here, truth becomes absolute. Hannah rose partway from the hatch, keeping her weapon aimed squarely at him. Move away from the edge, Kessler. Now? And if I don't, he asked gently. I'll shoot. Kessler's voice softened even further, almost pitying. You won't. Because you still believe you can save them. Another hand, smaller, thinner, grasped the edge of the pit. Fingers curled around the metal rim. Then another. And another. 3 hands. 4. Trembling, grasping, reaching. Silent cries echoed through the darkness below. Hannah recoiled, breath catching. She steadied her voice. We can't leave them. We won't, Theo said, stepping to her side. Keller pressed his palms to his ears, rocking. He told me they can't come out, they forget how to see the light, they don't remember their own names, he said their faces are not theirs anymore. Kessler tilted his head at Keller. You listened well, Marcus. You were always my most obedient subject. Keller let out a strangled cry. Theo's anger boiled over. You think they are objects. Art pieces. But they are people. Kessler smiled softly. People are merely unfinished sketches. Hannah fired. A single shot exploded through the tunnel. The lantern flickered wildly. The bullet hit the concrete wall just inches beside Kessler, as he slipped back into darkness with inhuman fluidity. The silhouette dissolved into the shadows, impossible to track. Theo shouted, Where is he? Keller screamed, Don't chase him. Don't, he wants you to. But it was too late. The scrape of metal echoed from somewhere behind them, then above, then below. The tunnels carried the sounds in every direction, making it impossible to tell where Kessler had gone. Hannah refocused on the hatch. Theo, help me. Now? They grabbed the nearest hand. It clung back with surprising strength, cold and shaking. Together they pulled. A face emerged. Or what remained of a face. A woman's features, sunken, pale, streaked with soot and charcoal dust. Her eyes were wide but unfocused, pupils dilated so far they swallowed the irises. Her hair hung in tangled strings. Her lips trembled without forming words. Theo nearly lost his breath. Jesus! She blinked slowly, like someone waking from a nightmare that never ended. Her mouth opened. A whisper left her throat. Not a name. Not a plea. Just one shaking word. Light? Hannah stared at her. We are here. You're safe now. But the woman recoiled at the word safe, shaking her head violently. Behind her, more hands reached upward, some trembling, some rigid, some twitching like puppets pulled by invisible strings. Keller cried, Stop. You can't bring them up, he won't let you, he won't. We are not leaving them, Theo snapped. The woman's fingers dug painfully into Hannah's wrist, not letting go, even as her body trembled uncontrollably. Theo pulled harder, lifting her torso free. Then they froze. Carved into the skin of her arms, faint, shallow, deliberate, were dozens of tiny symbols. XS. Circles. Shaded shapes. Marks that matched the ones in Kessler's notebook. Theo felt horror crawl up his spine. Kessler hadn't just drawn them. He had annotated them. Suddenly Keller screamed, a raw, panicked sound that tore from his chest. "He's behind you." Hannah spun. Just as a shadow lunged across the wall, swift and silent. Theo staggered backward, dragging the rescued woman away from the hatch. Keller pressed himself against the wall, body convulsing with terror. "He's trying to close the hatch. He doesn't want anyone to leave." The heavy metal door of the pit creaked, shifting under an invisible force. A hand, long, pale, steady, pressed against the underside, pushing it upward to slam shut. Hannah fired again. The lantern sputtered. Sparks danced. The shadow retreated, but not fully. Kessler's voice rose from the dark, calm and unhurried. "You shouldn't open things that were meant to stay closed." Theo yelled, "Hannah, move. He's trying to trap you." Hannah jerked away from the hatch as the metal lid swung violently. The rescued woman stumbled free, collapsing into Theo's arms. Keller sobbed, "He's going to take someone. He always takes someone when he's seen." Theo didn't understand. "Seen?" Keller shook uncontrollably. "He only attacks in darkness. But when someone sees his face, when they look at him, he takes them." Hannah scanned the tunnel, heart pounding. "Where is he?" The whisper returned, soft, warm, frighteningly close. "Right here." Theo spun. Too late. A figure burst from the shadows, swift and surgical. Cold fingers clamped around Theo's wrist. Theo gasped, dropping his flashlight. Kessler stepped forward, just barely illuminated, his face finally visible for a fraction of a second. Not monstrous. Not twisted. Calm. Blank. Peaceful. The face of a man who believed he was doing God's work. Theo froze in place, stunned. And in that moment, Kessler whispered, "You look better in charcoal." A flash of movement, too fast to track. Theo was yanked backward into darkness. Hannah screamed his name. Keller collapsed, sobbing. The rescued woman shrieked, covering her ears. And Kessler's voice echoed through the tunnels, soft and triumphant. "One more for the gallery." Then silence. Suffocating, cavernous silence. Theo was gone. Theo's scream never fully formed. It was swallowed by the tunnel, dragged into the darkness so violently, so abruptly, that for a heartbeat Hannah wondered if she had imagined the entire thing. One moment he stood beside her, breath frantic, hand steadying the rescued woman, the next he was yanked backward, disappearing into a corridor of shadows with a force that defied instinct and reason. The echo of his boots scuffing the floor faded too quickly. His radio clattered onto the concrete, skidding to a stop near the hatch. Then nothing. Just the suffocating void. Just the wet drip of unseen water. Just Keller's quiet, broken sobbing. Hannah's heartbeat thundered through her skull. "Theo," she shouted, voice cracking as it dissolved into the tunnels. "Theo, answer me." Silence clawed back. The rescued woman trembled violently in Hannah's arms, whispering incoherently, fragments of words, syllables crushed by years of darkness. Keller pressed both palms to the wall, rocking, muttering, "He took him, he took him, he took him," as if repeating it would somehow undo the reality. But it didn't. Theo was gone. Stolen in the blink of an eye. Hannah forced her breath steady. Panic could crack a person open in a place like this. Panic could turn the darkness alive. And she needed clarity, not fear, if she was going to survive, if she was going to get them out, if she was going to bring Theo back. "We are moving," she said firmly, pulling the woman to her feet. Her voice shook, but her resolve didn't. "Stay behind me. Stay close. Don't look into any dark corners. Don't turn around unless I tell you to." Keller slipped downward, collapsing onto his knees. "We can't follow him, you don't understand. He knows these tunnels every inch. He'll lead you where the city forgets you." "Keller," Hannah said sharply, "if you know where he takes people, you are going to tell me. Right now." Marcus lifted his head. Tears streaked his cheeks, but behind them was a flicker of something else: shame, guilt, memory. He wiped his face with trembling hands. "I tried to warn you," he whispered. "He always chooses someone when he's seen. He doesn't kill them. Not immediately. He breaks them first. Turns them into something they don't recognize." Hannah leaned closer. "Where does he take them?" Keller swallowed hard. "There's a place deeper in the tunnels. He called it the final studio. He said it was where he finished the sketches. Where people became their truest form." His voice cracked. "I heard screams coming from there. Long ago." The rescued woman whimpered, grabbing Hannah's sleeve with skeletal fingers. Don't go, he waits. Her voice was like torn paper, dry, delicate, breaking under its own weight. Hannah stared at her gently. "We are not leaving anyone behind." Her flashlight flickered faintly, just enough to cast a thin ribbon of light ahead. It revealed the tunnel splitting into two branches: left, a narrow passage choked with old pipes; right, a downward slope that seemed to pull the air into itself. Keller pointed with shaking fingers. "Right, always right, it goes deeper." "Then that's where we are going." Hannah lifted her weapon in one hand, her dying flashlight in the other. Every step felt like stepping into the throat of something alive. The darkness grew thicker, the cold sharper, the smell of damp charcoal stronger. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, as if they weren't shadows at all but imprints left by others who had walked this path and never returned. They moved slowly, breaths shallow, Hannah listening desperately for any hint of Theo. A struggle. A shout. Anything. But the tunnel gave her nothing. After several agonizing minutes, Keller hissed, "Stop." Hannah froze. "What is it?" she whispered. Keller nodded toward the floor. Her flashlight beam trembled across the concrete and revealed streaks. Drag marks. Uneven, smeared lines carved through dust and moisture. Theo had been pulled down this passage. And not gently. Hannah's stomach twisted. "He's alive," she whispered, clinging to the only hope she had. "He has to be." "Alive doesn't mean safe," Keller murmured. They followed the drag marks around a bend. The tunnel widened abruptly into a cavernous underground room, a maintenance hub abandoned decades earlier. The ceiling arched high above them, supported by rusted beams and decaying concrete. But it wasn't the architecture that froze them in place. It was the smell. Rot. Damp. Something metallic. Something older than death. The room felt wrong, not merely abandoned, but desecrated. The first thing the flashlight revealed was Theo's badge, lying on the floor near the entrance. Not broken. Placed. As if Kessler had wanted them to find it. Hannah's throat tightened. She picked it up with trembling fingers. "Theo," she breathed. Keller flinched violently. "This is where he finishes them." The rescued woman began shaking so hard Hannah had to steady her. The beam drifted farther. And then Hannah saw them. Figures. Not moving. Not speaking. Lined against the wall in silent rows. At first her mind refused to understand. The shapes looked like mannequins, human silhouettes wrapped in canvas and charcoal-dusted cloth. Some were sitting. Some kneeling. Some standing with heads tilted at unnatural angles. Their skin was covered in smeared markings. Their clothes torn, faded. Their limbs stiff. But they weren't mannequins. They were people. Or what remained of them. Their eyes had been painted over with charcoal. Thick black strokes where irises once were. Expressions frozen in grotesque forms, fear, agony, emptiness. Keller collapsed, retching. The rescued woman screamed, curling into herself. Hannah backed away, horror flooding her nerves. This wasn't a studio. It was a mausoleum. This is what he meant, Keller sobbed. This is what he does. He finishes them. He turns them into what he thinks they should be. Hannah scanned the chamber frantically. Theo, where is Theo? Her flashlight jittered across the room. Then landed on something in the center. A chair. Wooden. Simple. Old. A rope tied loosely at its base. A half-drawn sketch on an easel beside it. And on the floor. Theo's flashlight. Still warm. Still rolling slightly, as if recently dropped. Hannah sprinted to it, heart tearing itself apart. Theo. Theo. The rescued woman wailed. Keller crawled forward like a wounded animal. But Theo wasn't in the chair. He wasn't on the floor. He wasn't anywhere. Hannah's voice trembled. Where did he take him? Where? A faint sound answered her. A breath? A slow, steady exhale coming from above. Hannah raised her flashlight. There, standing on a metal beam above the chamber, was a silhouette. Tall. Still. Balanced with impossible gentleness. Kessler. His head tilted downward, watching her with calm, patient curiosity. And beside him, Theo. Bound. Gagged. Eyes wide with terror. Suspended by rope tied cruelly to the beam. Alive. Kessler stepped into the faint cone of light, revealing part of his face, serene, empty, horrifying in its lack of emotion. You came quickly, he said softly. I knew you would. Hannah raised her weapon, breath shaking. Let him go. Kessler tilted his head. Why? He is beautiful this way. The fear. The anticipation. The moment before transformation. Theo thrashed weakly against the restraints. Please. Hannah shouted. Kessler. Don't do this. Kessler's voice didn't rise. It didn't break. It didn't waver. It remained soft. Gentle. Controlled. The gallery needs balance, he murmured. And he has a very interesting face. Hannah aimed. Hands steady. Sight aligned. Kessler smiled faintly. You'll miss. The lights flickered. He moved. A blur of shadow. A whisper of cloth. Theo dropped. Not far, not to die, but into another tunnel branching from the beam, pulled swiftly out of view like prey being dragged by a predator. Hannah fired. Concrete shattered. Dust exploded. But Kessler was gone again. Theo's muffled scream echoed once, then vanished into unending darkness. Keller sobbed. He's taking him to the end, the deepest part, where no one comes back. Hannah knelt, breath trembling, staring into the black corridor where Theo had disappeared. Then she stood slowly. Her voice low, steady, unbreaking. "We are going after him." Keller shook violently. "You don't understand, no one who goes down there." Hannah stepped forward, fire in her voice. "I'm not letting him take another person." The rescued woman clutched her arm. "He waits in the dark, he waits." Hannah pried the woman's fingers loose gently. "Keller," she said, turning to the trembling man, "you're coming with me. You know the tunnels. You know how he thinks." He shook his head violently. "He will kill us, he will." "No," Hannah said. "He wants us to follow. And if he wants that, then he has a plan. And we are not leaving Theo in it." The air pulsed. The tunnels moaned quietly. And a single whisper rose from the corridor ahead. Kessler's voice. "Come and see the final sketch." Hannah lifted her weapon. Her flashlight flickered in her hand. Then she stepped into the darkness. The corridor swallowed Hannah before she even took her third step. The air shifted, denser, colder, soaked in a dampness that felt older than the city itself. Her flashlight flickered like a dying breath, its beam thinning into a fragile ribbon of light that barely pushed back the dark. Keller trailed behind her, trembling so hard his footsteps stuttered against the concrete. "He knows we are coming," he whispered, voice cracking. "He's drawing the path. He always draws the path." "I don't care," Hannah said, pushing forward. "We are taking Theo back." Her words felt loud in a place where even echo feared to respond. The tunnel sloped downward, each step taking them farther from the sounds of the city, deeper into a realm shaped by Kessler's mind, a labyrinth where light dared not linger. The rescued woman remained behind in the chamber, too broken to stand, whispering prayers to ghosts who no longer remembered their names. The tunnel narrowed. The ceiling pressed low. The smell shifted, charcoal, moisture, and something metallic, like rust and forgotten fear. "Stop," Keller whispered suddenly. Hannah spun, weapon raised. "What now?" He pointed toward the ground. Her flashlight dimly revealed smeared marks, drag lines, irregular but purposeful, Theo's desperate attempt to resist as he was pulled deeper. "He's slowing down," Hannah murmured, analyzing the patterns. "Kessler wants us to catch up." Keller's face tightened with dread. "He wants you to see something." A sound drifted through the tunnel then, soft, rhythmic, haunting. Scritch. 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 Charcoal on paper. Hannah's blood ran cold. They rounded a bend. The tunnel opened into a dome-shaped cavern, massive, echoing, silent but for the scraping stroke of charcoal against canvas. A lantern hung from an exposed pipe above, casting a slow, flickering glow across the hollow. In the center of the room, Theo. Alive. Bound to a wooden support beam, rope cutting into his wrists, gag tied tight across his mouth. His chest heaved with panicked breaths. His eyes, wide, terrified, shining with hope at the sight of Hannah. Hannah stepped toward him. Then froze. A figure crouched near him, sketchbook open, charcoal pencil gliding across a page with gentle precision. Kessler. He didn't look up. Not at first. He simply drew, breathing softly, the way a priest might whisper a prayer. Then he paused, lifted his head, and regarded Hannah with calm eyes, eyes that held no madness, no rage. Only purpose. "You came," he said softly. Hannah aimed her weapon. Step away from him, Kessler. Now? Kessler tilted his head, studying her stance, her trembling breath. You're angry. That ruins the lines in your face. Anger distorts beauty. Hannah stepped closer. Move. Away. From him. He turned a page in the sketchbook. You misunderstand, he whispered. I'm not hurting him. I'm capturing him. Theo muffled a scream behind the gag, jerking against the ropes. Hannah's voice hardened. You're going to let him go. Kessler sighed as though disappointed. You keep talking about letting go. You never consider what people need to become whole. You're murdering them, Hannah snapped. Kessler blinked. Slowly. Calmly. Murder is such a careless word. I do not butcher. I transform. They are dead, she shouted. You turned them into corpses. He smiled faintly. Yes. Finally still. Finally truthful. Hannah's breath shook. Where is Lena? Where is Jonas? Kessler slowly closed the sketchbook. You've already seen them, he said softly. And you didn't even recognize them. Keller let out a choking sob behind her. Hannah shook her head, refusing to give him power. Kessler. Step away. Last warning. He studied her carefully, her stance, her fear, her resolve, then lowered his gaze to Theo again. It's always fascinating, he murmured. When someone is moments away from their truest form. Theo let out a strangled cry. Hannah moved. She lunged forward. But the ground beneath her shifted. A wire. A trap. Her boot caught it, snapping a hidden mechanism. A metal grate slammed shut across the room's entrance, sealing her inside the cavern. Keller stumbled backward as the gate crashed between them, separating him from Hannah with a horrifying finality. Hannah! Keller screamed, banging on the bars. No. No. He wants you alone. Kessler stood, as elegantly as if rising from a dinner table. Yes, he said calmly. I do. Hannah aimed her weapon immediately. But Kessler was moving, not fast this time, but with a strange, graceful confidence. You came alone into my studio, he whispered. Braver than most. More foolish than all. Hannah's finger tightened on the trigger. But Kessler simply stepped into the center of the room, hands relaxed at his sides. Shoot, he said gently. Hannah froze. He offered his chest. If you believe bullets will save him, shoot. Theo's muffled scream tore through the cavern. Hannah didn't fire. Something in Kessler's posture stopped her. Not invincibility. Not fearlessness. But expectation. He wanted her to shoot. Kessler smiled faintly. You see. Even in darkness, you know the wrong lines to draw. Hannah stared at her breath. Why Theo? What do you want from him? Kessler gestured around the cavern. The lantern flickered, revealing dozens of canvases propped along the walls. They were unfinished. Each one distorted. Faces fragmented. Bodies twisted. All incomplete. All my work, Kessler murmured. Unfinished. Imperfect. I have searched for a muse who does not break under the truth. One whose fear shapes into something transcendent. His eyes softened as he looked at Theo. He is the first. Hannah fired. The bullet struck the wall inches from Kessler's head. He didn't flinch. The next one goes into your skull, Hannah growled. Kessler tilted his head. Then Theo dies with me. Is that what you want? Her chest tightened. Kessler stepped behind Theo, placing a hand on the rope, as if ready to yank it and snap Theo's neck in one swift motion. Drop your weapon, he whispered. Or he becomes stillness. Theo's eyes flooded with terror. Hannah's soul twisted. Then metal creaked behind her. Keller. He was climbing through a narrow maintenance slit in the wall, small enough for a child, but Keller squeezed through with trembling desperation. He dropped into the cavern, panting. Hannah, move. Kessler turned sharply. Keller lunged at him with the fury of 16 years of fear turned into a single moment of courage. It was chaos. Kessler swung. Keller slammed into him. The sketchbook fell. Theo toppled sideways. The lantern rocked and swayed, throwing jagged shadows across the chamber. Hannah sprinted forward, firing a warning shot. Keller and Kessler crashed into a pillar. The lantern fell, rolling across the floor. Kessler got his hands around Keller's throat. I spared you, he hissed. I let you live. Keller gasped, choking, not anymore. Hannah aimed. Kessler turned, eyes blazing with cold rage. Do it, he whispered. And Hannah did. The shot thundered through the cavern. Kessler jerked backward, a bloom of red on his chest. Keller collapsed, coughing violently. Theo thrashed against his ropes. Kessler staggered. Looked at Hannah. Smiled, faintly. As if satisfied. Then fell. His body hit the concrete with a dull, final thud. Silence followed. A silence so heavy it felt like the entire underground exhaled at once. Hannah rushed forward, dropping her weapon, tearing the ropes from Theo's wrists. He collapsed into her arms, shaking, breathless, alive. Keller sobbed into his hands. Theo whispered through cracked lips, Hannah, is he gone? She looked at Kessler's unmoving form. His eyes stared upward, no longer seeing anything. Yes, she whispered. It's over. But as she said the words, she noticed something. Kessler's hand. Not open. Not limp. Closed. Clutching a piece of paper. A sketch. Hannah pried it from his grip, trembling. It was a drawing. Of her. Standing in this very room. Weapon raised. Lantern flickering. Tears on her cheeks. Drawn in charcoal with impossible accuracy. Dated. Tomorrow. Hannah's heart stuttered. Behind her, Theo whispered, What is it? Hannah folded the sketch with shaking fingers. Nothing, she said softly. Nothing at all. She glanced once more at Kessler's still body. But for the first time, she wasn't sure he was truly gone.